All right, what's up? Welcome. Another open forum. Initially, we may get to some of the other World Economic Forum stuff here in a little bit. I want to go ahead and start the discussion with the Twitter stuff, I guess, and I'll cover it in brief. I do want to mention that I might also touch on some of the recent drama with other things too, but that's not the main point of this discussion, because it turns out that Ibarra tweeted at me today, and he's ended my career. He's ended my career because it turns out that both Ibarra and Lofton have banded together to do their own freestyle rap, and they clap back in the rap battle. As you know, you've seen me and others impersonating, doing some rap battle work, and now we've got Ibarra and Lofton clapping back. If you don't know, they formed a band and they've released this hot new track to set us straight. It's called All You Can Eat.
Give me some bologna, salami, and ham. Toast with butter and strawberry jam. I love it whether the food is cold or hot. Put a burger on a plate and it'll hit the spot. We'll eat everything in an incredible feast. $3.99 for all you can eat. All you can eat. All you can eat. All you can eat.
That's right. They made it clap. When they clap back, there's Erica Barr right there. There's Erica Barr right there at the buffet. All you can eat. Making it clap back. All you can eat. So anyway, they ended me right there. It's over. I'm done. I'm retiring from the internet today. It's all over. And look how mean. Oh, he's so mean. How dare him make a joke, even though hundreds of people were trashing Dyer on Twitter all week. How dare he make a joke about someone's weight, even though he's a KGB sorcerer, demon, scumbag. He's a satanic emissary. But how dare he make a joke about a chunky dude? Look, we're in a domain where nowadays, if you make a joke, it's hate speech. If you debate people, that's toxic masculinity. It's just, things have gotten so crazy that anything becomes an excuse, becomes a way to try to, in a really slimy, crying out while you stab the person way, try to play the victim. Oh, I don't even know exactly. It's still a mystery to me. What exactly is the mean part? Like, is it jokes? And, we've had a lot of people over the last several years who, maybe they encountered my material through a debate or a blood sport thing, which was not ever formal debates, first of all, right? I mean, blood sport stuff was just people getting on and acting Jerry Springer style crazy. And it was more of an entertainment thing. And then at times there would be formal debates, right? We had the formal debate with JF back in the day about atheism. So every now and then there would be a formal debate, but most of the time it wasn't. And there was, there was only like a handful of those, like 3 maybe, that I was directly involved in. And then, some other people like the Sedevacantis guy and then the other weirdo guy. And those were not formal debates. And so those got clipped where I got heated with somebody who was just being completely ridiculous and blasphemous or something like that. And I said something like, are you kidding? You're an idiot. You have no idea what you're talking about. People like T-Jump, who clearly had no idea what he was talking about. Or the Kurgan, who had no idea. He thought Denzinger was some guy and not that it's the name for the book of Catholic dogma. He thought it was just some guy who writes books and his opinions or something like that. So he didn't even know what Denzinger was. And so I said, you have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, clip it. Look, he's mean. He can only resort to calling the guy an idiot. So then what happened was those clips, and it's only like a handful. Remember, this is out of a span of like hundreds of hours of formal and informal debates. Public with famous people, private debates on Twitter with just people who wanted to pop in, right? So 2 or 3 clips made the rounds through people like Vocab Malone, Lofton, and others, intentionally clipping 2 or 3 moments of me calling someone an idiot, who was verifiably an idiot, out of hours and hours and hours of debates. And then it gives credence to everyone to say, oh, look, this is all he does. He just screams at people, even though within a minute, they could go and look and see whether there's countless hours of formal debates with Muslims, with atheists, and with all matter of disagreeers. No, 2 or 3 clips becomes then the justification for this is all he does, all he ever does. And so there's some people who believe this, and then those people just get really vocal on Twitter, and usually it's angry, butthurt Roman Catholics and people who were at one time in the Discord 6 years ago. Now, I don't run that Discord anymore. I don't have time to do it. I've handed that off to other people like FDA and others, and let them run it. David, they run that thing. I'm in there, popping in and out, maybe once every few months. I did a talk yesterday in there for the first time in maybe 3 or 4 months. So it's not something that I typically have a lot of time to devote to, but when it first started, that Discord was initially just a server that I created for, to have another social media outlet / backup. So it grew, kind of snowballed on its own, and we had people like David, Snack, Kai, Lewis, Orthodox Shahada guys. They came in, and we decided what we would do is make it a training ground, a tool, a basis for training people to do apologetics. And, I think providentially it became its own thing, right? It grew into being 10,500 people now. And along the way, any group like that, I don't care what group if you have a basket weaving group, right? You're going to have weirdos, creeps, people come in and cause problems. Because what I do ended up getting popular in the last 6 years, we've had a lot of people come and go. And it's true that in some cases, people were maybe booted by mods too quick, or there was something that happened that was a misunderstanding. And usually those kinds of situations get rectified. However, a lot of the people who were booted 5-6 years ago, they got really butthurt and really resentful about being booted. And so what happened is that they would then go to Twitter, and then they would form this idea that I was wronged because I was booted from a Discord, and therefore all of the ortho bros are bad and toxic. Now, nobody even used this term until it was like a pejorative that somebody made up years ago to say that people doing, quote, online orthodoxy are bad news. And this kicked up in 2018 because I did a calling out and a critique of Ancient Faith Radio because they were promoting a woman who was promoting Skittles things to kids. They initially denied that this was the case. Then they later removed that woman from their speaking tour and admitted that it was the case. As a result of this, Father Andrew Damick and other people launched a campaign to come against me and try to get me booted from the church as soon as I was entering the church. So that was the whole drama back at that time. And if you remember, Hundreds of people across Facebook, social media, Twitter, came after me, called me the worst person on the planet. I'm just a troublemaker. I'm this, I'm that, lying about me and all crazy manner of stuff. They brought back all the trad cat claims about me being a KGB sorcerer, an agent, an occultist, a Satanist, a witch, a Wiccan, just all this nonsense. And what do we see now? Well, turns out Ancient Faith Radio, who has a history of course, booting people who are pretty good and running off the people that are pretty good. That's their track record. We're going to open it up here in a second because we have some people who took issue with me, and I wanted to give them the opportunity to come and talk about it. Most of the time, what happens is that these people don't know the background. They have no idea about what has happened the last 6 or 7 years. They're fresh to these topics, and they feel the need to sound off on it and go off on me and use it as another instance to garner favor and gather in the conglomeration of lunatic haters that are out there. So this is what's recently occurred is this email, if you can see it here, that went out to a lot of people, and it says that the St. Phoebe Center, this is the well-funded from the global establishment operation pushing for deaconesses in the Orthodox Church, they, together with some of their people, Dr. Theological and Dr. Carrie Frost, will be featuring a documentary on deaconesses in the Orthodox Church. So the two people who are the main proponents of this diabolical move are mentioned as featured in the documentary. And when you ask about the documentary, they say, "Oh, how dare you question our motives for doing this? How dare you? You must be an evil, bad person because all we're doing is opening the issue to discuss and debate the topic. Surely you can't be against debating the topic." Now, if you watch the recent discussion that I did with Father John Wyford, you will know that he did a really brief but thorough refutation of the whole idea of deaconesses. It's premised on the idea that this person was not a female deacon and therefore not part of the priesthood. So it's a kind of bait and switch wordplay that they do. And he pointed out that this is an incrementalist technique that we already saw in denominations like the Episcopalians, who introduced first deaconesses to then say, well, if you have a problem with a deaconess, if you don't, then you shouldn't have a problem with women priests. Well, if you don't have a problem with women priests, then you shouldn't have a problem with a woman bishop. This is the Overton window. The Overton window opens up the topic by giving radical oppositional opinions to then make the centrist position, which is the one they originally wanted to go towards, seem more plausible. And that centrist position isn't really centrist. It's moving typically in the direction of the leftist progressive model that they wanted all along. So this is a technique, very well known. It's called the Overton window. You throw up these radical positions. You open the question of something that isn't an open question. It's not an open question. We don't need to reinvestigate moral topics and issues. But this is the model that academics and subversives use. It's very transparent once you know it. And it's the same thing they do with all the other hot topic moral issues. Oh, maybe we should have Skittles things going on. Let's open the topic for debate. And then we'll find a centrist middle position, which, as Tim Gordon perceptively pointed out about the Roman Catholic version of all of this, if you watched Tim's stuff the other day, he said this very point. He said, the solution wasn't to immediately go for, in the Roman Catholic world, the blessings of Skittle marriage. They came up with a new category of a quasi-sacramental blessing for a union. And most likely the same type of tactic will be used here to say, well, maybe the correct centrist position is not to immediately have female priests or even maybe female, but let's just have a special quasi-diaconate blessing role for women who are excluded from this patriarchal, anti-feminist, all-male, phallocentric priesthood, which needs to change. Keep in mind, the people pushing this are absolutely goobers. They're absolutely subversives. And they really do believe their leftism. They really do think that they're battling against oppressive patriarchal structures and all this kind of nonsense. That's who leads the charge when it comes to this stuff, right? And that's why it's important to understand that, as a lot of the naive people here are not understanding, because I got a lot of comments saying that you're jumping the gun. You're jumping the gun. It's a fair, open discussion. Ancient Faith Radio just wants to have a fair discussion. They want you involved. They want you to come debate and voice your opposition. No, they don't. They want an open question to move the Overton window. But they're going to have some people on who disagree. So what? Well, it's not even an open issue. Why do we need to have a debate? It's like raising let's have an open discussion about whether Arius or Nestorius were actually heretical. Guess what? They do the same thing with Origen, don't they? Let's have an open discussion to reinvestigate whether Origen was unfairly targeted. And then you get bishops like Bishop Gallitzin promoting Origen as a saint. All the predictable moves of people who believe that. They really need to move the Overton window. They really need to change the Orthodox Church in the exact same way that the Protestant Church and now the Roman Catholic Church is being changed. So you understand, it's the same power structure, the same money, the same forces that are changing Rome, doing the exact same thing in the Orthodox Church. Now remember, I talked about this in 2018 and even before that. And the response of tons and tons of online Orthodox was how bad I am and how I need to be booted from the church as soon as I join the church. And yet here we are in 2018, after Ancient Faith Radio has already run off multiple people, consistently promoting all kinds of bizarre things for many, many years. And yet now it's still the exact same thing. It's pretty transparent what's going on. And you still got people saying how bad I am for talking about this. I mean, it's going to be just like Francis in 5 or 10 years, right? They'll be having open, I mean, they'll be totally lib, and I'll still be bad because I was right about this stuff. And the people think that they need then to make me into some sort of weird villain or that I'm evil and this kind of stuff. And that's why most of the time what happens, and there's a guy who had a really good comment, I think on this other, yeah, here it is. I appreciated this guy's comment, and this is an example of the types of comments that we see where people kind of come around to eventually realizing, oh, hey, you know what? Maybe you were right. Where is that comment? Let me find it. Here we go. Jay, I want to apologize to you. Earlier on in your live streams, I used to criticize your debating style, but after a number of your videos, I actually see why you do the way you do it. I now respect you and support you. You opened my eyes to heresy creeping into the OCA. And so people thought that, like, I just wanted to just go after people. And I'm just mean. I just randomly get fulfillment in just picking people to randomly go after and be mean to. If you followed what we do here, our model of content is absolutely not that. I don't spend my time targeting people and harassing people. Some woman implying today I was cyberbullying. So a public profile can call me out, call me every name in the book. If I dare to reply, oh, he's cyberbullying, we got him, look what he's doing, he's so mean. They cry out as they strike you. Yeah, tactics, right? 95% of the content that I do, if you scroll through my channel, has nothing to do with fighting and targeting and drama. I don't really do drama streams. Today is one of those rare exceptions where I address this. And if we look through the streams that I've done recently, let's see, we did pop stars, we did movies, we had open discussion where people call in. We've done many of those. I do them every week almost for many years. We did an interview with DPH. We had a discussion with a Thomist. We had open debates about Lofton and Ibarra and epistemology. We had comedic streams laughing at witches and feminists. We had open forum again. We had critiques of Matt Fradd, Trent Horn on their theology and their approach, right? It's not a drama stream. Responding to their argumentation, particularly there, Cameron's arguments for Bayesian mathematics proving the papacy. One of the stupidest things I've ever heard. So yeah, there I did. I called out a dumb argument and made fun of it. But you'll notice most of this content is not drama streams. It's what's your argument? You're welcome to call in, present your position, and let me reply. And we see how rare that actually is, right? In the sense of the haters. Haters never want to come on here because most of the time it's bad motivation to begin with. So, for example, we had 2 or 3 people within the last few hours where they were really voicing a lot of opposition and anger and disgust and all this. I said, come on and have a chat. You can have a chat with me. We can even chat in DMs, whatever. No, I want nothing to do with you. But what is it you think I've done? Oh, you were mean. To who? You were mean to that guy who's just a humble, pious Orthodox man trying to live out and fight against his passions. No, I'm sorry. If we want to go into the individual in question, this is an individual who was in the Discord in 2017-18, left it of his own accord because he decided that debate was mean. He himself talked about struggling with his own gender identity and dysphoria. So that's a fact. But then he decided as soon as he converted, and he had the same claim to being an Orthodox life coach the entire time, that he was now going to coach people about Orthodox spirituality with, again, nobody knows who this person's spiritual priest blessing comes from, right? Nobody knows where this idea of him being able to set up his public ministry comes from. And this person built his Twitter following over many years, counter-signaling, opposing the things that we do. So no, I didn't just pick him the other day from one post. Now, this goes back to 2017, 2018. And again, many of the people who left the Discord or were booted or filtered out are people who are unstable and have problems. So it's not, and then they needed an excuse, of course, to say why, oh, that Discord is mean. It's their fault. Oh, I have obvious mental problems, but it's actually their fault, right? Now, if this individual had gone to, Orthodoxy and just turned off all of his previous life coaching model of grift, then I think a lot of people would have been like, okay, yeah, makes sense. He's really trying to go in the right direction and change. But that never happened. He had the grift from day one and made it his model to say, oh, I do the things that they don't do. I do nice Orthodoxy. They do mean Orthodoxy. So it's a situation where people like this have subverted and opposed the stuff that we've done for 7 years now, 6 years. And any time that I even mention these people, a whole host of butthurt people, including a giant chunk of Roman Catholics, because they all band together, right? The Skittles so-called ortho people band together with the angry trad cats who are butthurt because of Francis to make me their bad guy and their villain. Oh yeah, he's mean. He's so mean. Listen, if you think I'm mean, how are you going to handle if persecution comes in this country? Right? Father Spiridon Bailey, for example, did a video the other day talking about how people in the West, Christians in the West, might be facing martyrdom. So you're mentally collapsing, spurging out because you think I'm mean. How are you going to handle martyrdom if that comes? I mean, there's just this absolute, just pathetic weakness, especially in men. And you'll notice a lot of these men, so-called, they band together with the feminist ortho woman contingent on Twitter. And they all tweet together and complain about their feelings being hurt and specifying that I'm mean, but nobody can ever explicitly say or detail what constitutes being mean. And when you really drill into it, it turns out, well, it makes me feel bad the way you talk to me, or when you cut somebody off in a discussion. I don't just randomly cut people off. I've done debate long enough that I know when somebody is avoiding the question, they're doing a red herring or they're filibustering, and that's when I interrupt people. Because I can tell where they're going with it. I know they're trying to get around the question I'm asking in a debate. Now, you may not have been trained in debate, or you didn't go to college to study that. Debate is a formal part of the art. It's a formal technique that's part of the arts. It's not arguing. It's something that you used to learn as part of your education. It's not my fault that none of you learned debate. If you go watch any professional classic Oxford debate, like Hitchens, for example, you'll notice in his Oxford Union debates, he'll even launch insults and jokes at people in the midst of his rhetoric. That's part of debate. But people today are so soy and so ridiculous, they can't even handle a joke in a debate. They melt down and turn the whole thing into that. That's how ridiculous it is. And you'll notice that, like, do you know how many times I've been called names in debates or on the internet? I mean, blood sports was ridiculous, but I will say this: it was actually a good initiation into not being worried about this kind of stuff. So, in other words, think back to the JF debate, right? I would say the majority of the audience at that time, and we had at least 6, maybe even 10,000 people tuning in live back when Worski had 300,000 people on his channel. The chat is just hundreds, thousands of people calling me out, calling me ridiculous, calling me names. Do you think I care about that? Nobody even remembers that, except they remember the debate and how the debate went. So it was a good sort of hazing, I guess you could say, into not being concerned about when somebody gets really mad in a debate or heated in a debate on Twitter. Again, men get heated in debates. I can't fathom why people don't understand this or think that this is somehow, quote, toxic, right? It's just ridiculous. And the most I've done in any of these debates is say somebody's an idiot, right? That's all I can recall is about 3 or 4 instances where I said, you're a goofus, you're an idiot. Okay, guess what? Some people are idiots. I don't know if you know this, but there are actual idiots out there. Have you read the book of Proverbs? Proverbs actually says there's fools. And that means that we have the ability to identify who's the fool. Because if I can't identify who's a fool, then what good is Solomon's advice in Proverbs if I can't identify it? No, what actually happens is when you call somebody a fool who's objectively acting like a fool, like the Kurgan or T-Dump, people then use that as a technique and a way to signify virtuous victimhood status. And that's why I recommended that paper, because even mainline psychology, normie psychology, can figure out that in a egalitarian society like we live in, which is a feminized society, a radically feminized society, what happens is victimhood status is the thing that you signify to increase your social status. So the more you can portray yourself as an oppressed victim, the more societal points you get. You get cred points. You get social credibility points in a feminist, egalitarian, quote, democratic, feelings-based society. And the same people that have changed our society into that want to then do the same thing in the church. This is so obvious and transparent. And I don't just mean the Orthodox world. Do you remember the recent comments from Francis? He said Christianity and the Catholic world, and by that he would mean the Orthodox world as well, they're too masculine. He says it's toxic masculinity. It needs to be more feminine. And you'll notice the pattern, too, of multiple of the individuals who, for example, years ago were booted from the Discord or whatever. Not everybody, but several of the problem people actually had certain, say, Skittles problems by their own confession. Now, I'm not knocking people that have those issues. Everybody has vices that they struggle with, sure. What I am saying, though, is that there are certain things that make you not qualified to be a spiritual father or a spiritual advisor. And in Orthodox Christianity, I think it's supposed to be the same way in the Roman Catholic world, according to canon law at least. But in Orthodox Christianity, as I shared on my Twitter feed the other day, you'll have articles of, priests pointing out that there's about 13 potential obstacles that would prevent the person from being a spiritual father. Some of those things would be if you had notorious struggles with certain sins, if that was a portion of your previous life. Other things like maybe you've been divorced, maybe you've been remarried a few times, maybe you, had a severe heroin addiction for many years. So this has nothing to do with whether you can come into the church and be saved. It has to do with people who are being promoted into the priesthood, because a priest is not just a person who offers the Eucharist. Priests are also, in a way, spiritual psychologists. And they know and can deduce from people's lives what's really going on with that person, what's causing these outbursts, these manifestations, these things that are going on with them, right? Now, not all priests do that correctly or effectively, but that's their job and their role in society. It's a public office. And so, as Paul says in Hebrews, no man takes this office on himself. You don't just start a life coaching thing. You don't get to just start a profile where you're a pseudo-monastic guy on Twitter and give yourself a monastic title and start your Twitter ministry. Now, some people were complaining and said, but you were talking about Orthodox theology back in 2018, weren't you? Yes. You know what I did? I took all of my essays. I printed out my theology essays. And I went to the priest that you see in the videos with me, and he can tell you that this is what happened. And I said, here are things that I talk about. I don't want to publicly talk about these theological things. If you think that it's inappropriate, or if I'm saying something wrong, or if you believe that it's not wise at this time. And ever since that time, this is 2017, 2018, when I first visited the church that I'm still under, my spiritual father. I'm not talking about the church that I came into, and I don't have any critiques or problems with that church. But I'm talking about the church that I found, that I believed was providentially where I needed to be. I still have that same spiritual father. I still have that same situation. And there's never been an issue. Now, there have been times where he said, you shouldn't have made this joke. Maybe this was going too far. You got a little too heated in this debate. Yeah, that's happened about 3-4 times in the last 6-7 years. Sure. But that shows that, in my situation, and it's not just my priest, it's also all the other clerics and people that they would hold me accountable, and they do. So the idea that I'm not subject to the same standard that's not true. It is true. I am subject to the same standard. But you'll notice in a lot of especially the Twitter world, none of those people ever identify who they're under. And there's even profiles out there claiming to be deacons. And there's absolutely no evidence that these anonymous profiles are actually deacons. And people need to be a little more sophisticated and a little less naive about how subversion works. Anybody can start a Twitter profile. Anybody can go on there, put up a picture of an Orthodox church, claim to be a deacon or a priest, and nobody has any idea if they actually are. So what's the standard for this? Well, multiple jurisdictions, as FDA pointed out yesterday, have already said and issued the rulings that you can't be an anonymous cleric. It's not appropriate for a person who is going to be a priest, deacon, to represent their faith and be at the same time anonymous. You can't do it. So that immediately calls into question anybody doing that and anybody who will not say who they're under or who they're accountable to. And immediately when you point this out, you're trying to dox me. You're trying to dox me. No. If you're going to be a public minister, priest, teacher, whatever, you don't have the liberty of also being secret agent journalist who can be anonymous, right? And I'm sure there's cases where people, maybe they need to be whistleblowers, they can be anonymous, sure. But for public teachers, you don't have that liberty. That's not something that you get to do. And again, already multiple jurisdictions have already said you can't do that. So, point being, Nobody should go to people for spiritual advice, marital advice. I mean, the crazy thing is like people will convert and they're like 20 years old and they go to canon law and then they go to Twitter and they try to tell married people how to operate in the bedroom. It's insane. It's ludicrous. And at the same time, all of these so-called Orthodox moms all over Twitter, blasting out, calling everybody out, teaching everybody this, that, putting up their prayers and how much they pray about everybody. All of that stuff is disgusting. If you're a mom and you want to make that your ministry, that's fine, but it's not your business to go around calling everybody out. Paul said that it's his desire that women learn in silence and in subjection. And it doesn't matter if you don't like that. The problem is in you if you don't like that. Now, there might be situations and cases where women can teach Sunday school, women can teach and talk about things on shows. I don't see a problem with that. But it's not appropriate to be public theological teachers and this kind of stuff. And maybe there could be a situation where there's an exception for that. Maybe there's a need in some case and there's no other options. Right? That could be a case-by-case basis, maybe. But it's not the norm is the point. And things that are not the norm, what happens in the subversion sphere is that they will take examples and exceptions to the rule, and they try to make those the rule. And that's when you know it's subversive, right? Because anytime you talk about this, somebody says, well, your wife has a podcast. Well, my wife doesn't talk about theology. She doesn't go out there saying, I'm the representative of ROCOR, and here is the proper theological interpretation of the Trinitarian. No. And by the way, I don't do that either. I don't represent ROCOR. I don't represent any jurisdiction in terms of my geopolitical opinions, my comedy, my media appearances. But one thing I noticed this last week in everybody getting angry was that when you start to ask people their reasons for their anger, a lot of them pointed out that, oh, it's because he's associated with so-and-so, and I don't like so-and-so. And they're a collective guilt troop that I can foist my anger upon. And so one woman, for example, eventually pointed out, oh, I don't like Rachel Wilson, and Jay Dyer has appeared with her, so that's a problem for me. So guilt by association. Now, guilt by association is the classic leftist tactic, right? Anybody who's ever been on a podcast, been on an interview, it therefore automatically means you support all of that person's positions. You're economically and ideologically in league with them because you were on their podcast, because you were on a show with them, because you had them on one time. Totally nonsense. It's totally disingenuous. They were all saying that, so several people said, and it's butthurt tradcats mainly that were saying this, Jay thinks he's Orthodox Andrew Tate because he was on a show with Rachel, and Rachel was on a show with Rollo, and Rollo talked about Tate, so therefore, you see, he's equivalent to Andrew Tate. I mean, what? So basically, by this argument, everybody believes everybody's positions, because these same people are on leftist boards or on leftist chats, therefore they believe all the same things that the leftists they appear with believe, and therefore they all support XYZ, cutting off your pee-pee. Now, if I accused all of them, oh, so you believe in cutting off children's pee-pee? How dare you say such a thing? So that's the standard you apply. If you ever appeared with somebody or interviewed somebody or was on a podcast, whatever, everybody, you have all those same views, right? So it's a slimy tactic. Just like the other person's slimy tactic, some woman's DMing me today about, how dare you respond to this 15-year-old boy? There's nothing in his bio that said anything about being 15. I don't know if he's 15. Oh, well, it looks to me like I've seen cyberbullying. So again, people can say anything they want to about me, my wife, whatever, It's all fair game. If I dare reply or clap back or even offer them the opportunity to come chat, oh, cyberbullying! Oh, look at his cyberbullying! Look at what he's doing! It's just like completely ridiculous. Like, no wonder society's collapsing when like these are the people that are going to be put in charge, right? I mean, are these the people that women want to run everything? They want to run the corporations. I mean, I just saw a plane catching fire yesterday and crashing, right? What, Delta or whatever it is. I mean, this is what we're going to get when these people are. So are you going to run the airlines on the basis of how the airplanes make you feel? Are you going to run the city sewage on how it makes you feel? Are you going to run the water systems on how they make you feel? See how good that works and watch everything collapse. This is why things are collapsing, is because this is what's dominating. This is what's ruling today. This kind of insanity. And really it is, the root of it is that the society has been feminized. And femininity is great, but it's great in the domain that it's supposed to be in the home, where the female nurtures the children and so forth, right? That's what femininity is made for. But these people buy into the lie that that's an oppressive structure, and that for women to be free and to feel fulfilled, they have to rebel against all boundaries and become what men are and what men do. And then, shocker, they find out that they're miserable when they do that, because you're not made for that. Duh. Look how mean he is. How dare he say what we already all know? How dare he say what was the idea of the church for the last 2,000 years and all traditional religion? How dare he say it? Even though we all know it. Even though the whole world operated the same way for thousands of years. No, we have to all bow to the last 70, 80, 100 years of waves of feminist revolution. But feminist revolution is the same as Marxist revolution. It comes out of the same ethos. And that whole ethos is about overturning the existing structure to destroy it, to supposedly institute a more fair new thing. A great reset, a starting over, a year zero of Mao, a year one, whatever. But all of that is premised on the idea that there's not actually telos, there's not actually purpose, that men aren't made for certain things and women aren't made for certain things. No, everything's just up for grabs. We make it what we want. No, you can't. It's not, sorry, it doesn't work that way. And everyone who goes against the boundaries that are set up, natural and supernatural, finds themselves warring against themselves, against nature itself, against purpose, against health, against wholesomeness, etc., all those things. And the further they plunge into destruction, the more they want the thing that's destroying. No, we need more liberalism. We need more DEI. We need more inclusivism. We need more. And then as it gets worse, no, we need more of it. Real Marxism's never been tried. Real free markets have never been tried. Real equalitarianism has never been tried. Real communism has never been tried. Real equality has never been tried. Because of the oppressive structures of Christianity that hold us back. Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, so all of this should be obvious, but it's not. Because, again, it's a society moving towards being based on feelings. And feelings are good and they have a place, but you can't run society, you can't run a business, you can't run a government, you can't run a family, you can't run an organization based on feelings, based on what you want to be the case. And that's why men have traditionally been and are leaders. That's why men go to war. Warfare is really the ultimate. I'm not saying warfare is good, but warfare is really the ultimate sort of example of a situation where it's a zero-sum game. Like, you can't make a mistake in warfare. Imagine trying to base warfare on feelings, right? I mean, what? And although warfare is a tragedy, it's a result of the fall, no society, no family can function without that element of a warrior spirit and warfare being present. For example, as a guy, I have a duty to protect my wife. I have a duty to set boundaries. I have a duty to do those things. If people come over those boundaries, people break into my house, something like that, right? I have a duty to engage in that defense. Imagine me complaining about, sorry, Mr. Raper Man. I don't feel like you should have broken into the house tonight. Can we sit down and have a safe space conversation as to why you shouldn't have done these mean things? And I'm sure if you will hear me out, you'll understand my side and that you shouldn't be hurting people's feelings by trying to break into their house and be a raper man. How well would that go? You see how silly this is? We shouldn't have boundaries. We shouldn't have walls. Oh, do you live in a house with walls? What are you talking about? Anyway, so we're going to open it up, and then I'll go to WF. I'll probably clip this later to be two different things, because the WF stuff, well, actually it does kind of fit with this topic, because they're having like pagan witch blessing ceremonies at the World Economic Forum. Like, what? I mean, I guess that's feminist. I guess it does make sense. Anyway, so people that have issues, look, tonight is not about talking about Bitcoin. It's not about somebody's, I want to come on and debate Bitcoin. It's not about Bitcoin, dude. It's about people that have specific issues with things I've said, or what you think that specifically I did wrong in the last few days. I really honestly don't feel like calling out somebody who I think is subversive and who reaches, thousands of people in the Orthodox sphere. I don't feel bad about that, because I don't have a personal issue with that person themselves, other than that they continue to do and operate in this way, and they personally have opposed what we do. So you're welcome to come on if you want to talk about those topics, those subjects, in a rational, reasonable way. And if you want to offer a constructive critique, I'm open to hearing it. But let's keep it to those things for the right now. Maybe later on I'll open it up to theological questions. I know that another, separate from all of this, apparently Redeemed Zoomer has gotten sort of a meltdown going, where a lot of people are leaving his circles and converting to Orthodoxy, which is good news, and he's really upset about that. So maybe later on we can open it up about his issue, because I've got a lot of messages the last few days. Hey, Redeemed Zoomer is melting down because he's never been the same since the debate that you had with him. So if there's people who want to talk about that, I got a lot of messages about that. We can open up about that later. Stephen Golay, what's up? Looks like he's having an issue with connection. You got to unmute. Go ahead. Yeah, you're there.
Jay.
Yes, sir.
Jay. Let's say I'm 75 years old. I guess that puts me in the Zoomer category. But first of all, I do have a question about how others respond to you. That's my calling. But I was Orthodox. My wife and I were Orthodox for a certain period of years. Something happened, which I'm not under professional obligation, restriction to talk about, in which we left. I myself first came back to Orthodoxy about 8 months ago.
Okay.
California. And my coming back has a lot to do with listening to you at 74 years old.
Okay.
So if I'm an exception to all the young guys that you are constantly accused of sort of piping away from someplace or other, and I'm an exception to that, and I appreciate everything that you've done. My question, though, concerns that, if I understand correctly, part of the, let's call it attack from you, from the Orthodox perspective, was, as you said, you raised certain issues about ancient faith radio.
Yes.
That's where it began. I'm somewhat familiar with ancient faith radio when they were Conciliar Press.
Okay.
Put that aside. But I think, if I understand correctly, that a second issue became and how the so-called Ortho Brothers, online orthodoxy, behaved or their presence during COVID, right? Is that correct?
That actually, I forgot about that, but yes, that did become an issue where people were.
That became and of course in the parish that I'm with currently, that tends to be you have admirers there. I guess that's the proper word.
Okay.
But that's a bit of the conversation that reluctance of, or it's called a pedestrian word, bad mouthing about the Ortho Brothers has to do with how to behave during COVID.
Okay.
And pointing out that many of the hierarchs closed churches,
right,
and basically took orthodoxy out of the 3D world.
Right.
And it's in that, and I that baffled me when I was looking about coming back into orthodoxy, because that's really part of the attraction of orthodoxy, that it stays within the 3D world.
Yeah.
And closing the churches, isolating the sacraments,
right,
from the people was quite disturbing to me. So,
agreed.
but it's going to come around again as such things, right? And since I listened to you also on on Jones's channel, place, with all the talk about disease X, now in the last 48 hours, aerosol, Ebola, maybe being what disease X is about. Well, the hierarchs are going to respond to that.
Right.
And in your thinking, your discussion, have the hierarchs learned a lesson from COVID about how to behave towards Orthodox people the second time around? Because I can see this being an issue, let's say, 4, 5, 6 months from now.
I don't know. That's a great question. Thank you for that, Stephen. So for those that couldn't hear, if you're listening on YouTube to his audio, there was kind of a tough audio situation there. He basically said that when he came back to Orthodoxy, he noticed that a big part of the issue and why a lot of people were angry. Now, this is post 2017-18 drama, right? So, yeah, I actually forgot about the 2020 drama, right? So, 2017, 2018 era drama had to do with Ancient Faith Radio. Then the drama piped back up in 2020, 21, because throughout that period, a lot of the Orthodox world capitulated and closed their churches and threatened, to excommunicate people if they, fought against this. If they they were threatened to defrock priests if they continued to reverence the icons, if they did the Eucharist the old way, because of supposedly there would be lawsuits and this kind of stuff. And so a lot of this happened in particularly areas of the OCA. That then led a lot of people getting angry. And I, of course, always said that I don't agree with this. It's not what I would, I don't think any of that's right. Other people were way more adamant in the orthosphere than I was. Not talking about stabbies, but about what you're supposed to do in the churches, because in my personal situation, it was never an issue. Like, I didn't have a problem where, I found a parish where there was none of that. And that's where I spent most of that 2020, 2022 period during, if I was able to go to church when I was near a parish, depending upon where I was at, it was at a parish where that wasn't a problem. And even when I went to parishes where they tried to enforce that, I didn't listen. I didn't obey that, because there's limits to obedience. So I can't speak to how every so-called ortho bro handled the individual situations that they were in, because there was a lot of people in the OCA that got really, they got angry with the OCA over those things. And then I think what upset people even more was that after all of this, there didn't appear to be a whole lot of like walking it back on the part of the hierarchy, there appeared to be then, now we have to go after all the people that didn't go along with what we said during the coup. So basically they used it as a way to try to figure out who the problem people were. And then, although I do think that you're right, that there could be another disease X coup type situation, really a lot of this had to do more so, I think, with figuring out who the problem people would be as they push for the ecumenist reunion with Rome. Now that seems to be continually derailed, and I think that makes them really mad. But if the OCA continues to move towards wanting to align with the ecumenical patriarchate, Bartholomew, all of these big geopolitical things are really the main point. That's the main purpose for a lot of these things. There's other purposes as well. You could argue that maybe these kinds of so-called medical emergencies are actually ways to attack and control the church and shut down the liturgy. And yeah, I think that's all part of it too. And yeah, there's a lot of people that they're still salty over the fact that all of the people opposed to that stuff have been proven right, including the stabbies. So rather than walk any of that back, I think everybody just doubled down. And now it's like, let's just forget about it. Look, it was a tough time. Let's just put it behind us. Okay, let's do that. But the people that are fully on board with the Skittles, the women deaconesses, the Coof, they all kind of have the same positions. They all flock together, right? Like the people that are pro Stabby, pro Coof, they tend to be the people in these domains that they want the women deaconesses and priests. They want Skittle stuff. They want to go back to Rome. They're ecumenists. I mean, they all, it's like the same stuff goes together. So as to what's coming down the pipe, I don't know, but I think you're right that the rhetoric out of the World Economic Forum appears to be the possibility of another thing like the coup. And it's an election year, and that plays into it as well. And so they want to definitely derail. Again, I'm not saying that makes Trump like the savior or anything like that. There's a lot of problems with the policies and what Trump did the last time he was in, for sure. But they have said that they really have to do whatever it takes to make sure. And I was listening to an interview, I forget who it was, but somebody made the point that it's not that Trump himself is like the mastermind of opposition to the New World Order or whatever. It's that Trump represents a wave that could actually bring to the fore a lot of people who could be significant future challenges. Do you see the point? So it's not even so much about mistakes or Trump himself. It's like he's this rising sort of wave. And then the people that ride that wave, you can get out of this a groundswell that can be more and more significant opposition, is the point. I mean, even take Elon, Twitter, all of this has been good, right? All of this stuff. Imagine if we had the outlets like we have now during 2019, 2020, 2021. Well, probably a lot of this stuff wouldn't be able to fly. But they had to do the Russia collusion stuff to shut down, because that was the justification for all of the tech censorship. And all the tech censorship was all of the platforms. And that was on the basis of supposedly Russia collusion. So you see how Trump, even in that instance, was the symbol of the need for shutting down all the public discourse. So likewise, now we're at a situation where X is back. There's more discussion. And it's going to be really difficult to foist all of that stuff on people when if there's even one outlet like this one. So how that will play out, I don't know, but I'm not going to be, like I've been saying, I think 2024 is going to have all kinds of wild and crazy stuff coming down the pipe. But thank you for that question there, Stephen. Glad to hear that it's going good for you. Now we had a guy, Michael, you're in the chat. Do you want to? You're a disagreeer, a person who had issues with me. I'm going to invite you to speak if you want to. You don't have to, but if you want to come on and voice your critiques, I reached out to you because you said you specifically had issues. So You're welcome to come on. You can make whatever statements, critiques you want. You said you wanted to come on, so I sent you the link. I'm not going to be mean to you, Michael. I'm ready to have the conversation. You said you wanted to have it. You said I'm there. Where'd you go, dude? I just sent you the invite. Let me check my DMs, because... No. Okay, maybe he popped back in. You might have to turn on your mic. Michael, are you there?
Yo.
Hey, what's up, dude?
Man. Hey, Jay.
What's up?
Man. Yeah, nice space. Listen, sorry I dipped out just now.
That's all right.
I wanted to talk just a little bit, about, what's been going on.
Okay.
I don't know the backstory with anything that's going on. It's not super... I'm sure it's important, but it doesn't really concern me personally. But what I wanted to talk to you about is just kind of, I'm not in your position, obviously. I don't have such a large following, not even close. And I'm sure you have to deal with a lot of people being uncharitable towards you, and I'm sure it has an effect on you. But I think if we're going to... As Orthodox Christians, right, try to put ourselves out there, we should try to be more charitable towards others who perhaps are ignorant to the issue or just have come in with an experience and they end up thinking something differently. You know what I mean?
Right, but the specific instance that we're talking about is a situation where there is a long backstory, and you're saying, well, I don't know that backstory, but the reason for my actions is because of this person being a problem person. So, you had made a point to say that you're on team Thaddeus, I'm a bad guy, but why would I be bad for pointing out that guy has no authority, or he's not in the position to do what he's trying to do?
It's not so much that you did it. I don't really care if you did it. It's kind of the way you go about it. It comes off as just mean.
So again, these are all like subjective things. Like, so it's not that I did it. Now it's the way you did it. So what does that mean to say that it's mean? How exactly does it mean?
Well, how exactly does it mean? I mean, it's the definition, look, you can go about things different ways, you know what I mean? And if I were to, let me just look at this tweet. Let me pull it back up, because I know it was a while ago. I don't remember it, but I don't know. Something about it was rubbing me the wrong way.
So the way it made you feel, right?
Well,
I mean,
Jay, I never claimed to be an objective thinker. I think based on feelings here.
Are you joking? I don't know. I don't get it. You think based on feelings? Joking. You think based on feelings?
Yeah. How I feel, how something makes me feel. I think that's totally valid.
Not for a man. It's not.
Oh, come on, Jay.
I'm dead serious. Men do not think on feelings.
I think many men think on feelings.
Well, many men do, but they shouldn't.
This isn't... Okay, well...
Okay, I mean, this was kind of the point I was trying to make earlier in the talk when I opened it up tonight was, masculinity is about controlling your emotions, controlling your feelings. It doesn't mean men don't have feelings, but it means that their dominant ethos and purpose is going to be guided by reason. It's going to be guided by objectivity, guided by logic. And that's why women who are guided largely by thinking in terms of emotion are not fit to be in the positions that men are usually in. That was the point.
Okay. I actually agree with that point.
Okay.
But I don't think that means that men can't think on emotion. Emotion is very important.
I agree, but it has to be controlled and it has to be measured. It has to be channeled and used in the right way. And for example, a guy, like if you took like I don't know, a boxing class, or if you took like even a logic or debate class, right? Like for example, if you took college philosophy and debate, one thing you would learn is that you can't, in a debate, even if you get heated, you can't let your emotions get the best of you, right? Now, I'm not saying that I have always perfectly done that, because it's really difficult to do that. Like if you have, say, I'm just using debate as an example, like if you had 20 years of debate, there's still going to be times where you get heated, where you kind of might even lose your temper. But you do learn over time to be able to train yourself to not let the whole debate get focused on your anger or your emotions or your passion. So, and the same thing, like if you took a boxing class, right? They're going to be teaching you to control your anger, because maybe if you're boxing, you might just lose your control and just go wild, and then you get knocked out by the guy, right? So it's just a classically masculine thing that men have to learn, not to be totally unemotional, but to not react on the basis of emotions.
Okay, but I know you just said you don't always adhere to that, but I guess what I've been seeing from you over the last couple days has kind of been that way. It doesn't seem rational, you know? I've seen you go to pages with like 50 to 100 followers, and they make like a comment about you. They don't even at you. It could just be about the situation.
Well, they speak in the threads, and I've always given people the opportunity to come chat, right? Now, if they appear to be completely irrational, I typically will block those people. But a lot of people expressed that they were angry or whatever. So like you, I'm saying here, you can have the chance to come chat, talk it out. Tell me exactly what you think I'm doing wrong, because I'd like to hear it. And what I've heard is, well, it made me feel bad. And then it's like, what's the way you did it? And it's all these things that aren't really anything substantial. So I'm not saying you don't have a point, but I just don't, like, I'm not hearing the thing that is really the bad thing. So it went from, you talked about this person, but I don't know the backstory. But now you're saying it's because I replied to somebody with a small following. It's like, but why is
no? Well, it's a combination of these things. It doesn't have to be one thing, right? It makes it seem like there is a certain behavior that stems from like your personal sort of I don't know. I guess I would just say your personality, where it seems like you've amassed this large following, but then you can't take the hits that come with having a large platform like that. I
can't take the hit, dude. I've been taking the hits since before the following. So what do you mean? Like, you think I don't? You think I don't get this every day? What are you talking about?
No, this is what I'm saying. This is what I said in the beginning. I know you're not. I know I'm not in the position. Many people aren't, and so you probably get a lot of shit.
So basically, what you're saying is, like, people should have the liberty to say whatever they want to, but not have to deal with me replying to them or giving them the opportunity to, because then it's like, no, I want to be able, with anonymity, to say whatever I want to about you, but not be held accountable to the things that I say. So that's kind of what it sounds like.
Oh, I guess that is what it is. Oops.
Well, okay.
My bad, Jay. You got me. Wow.
Well, look, I'm not trying to make you mad or antagonize you. I'm just trying to have the rational discussion about what specifically the issue is.
Sure. I hear you. One thing though, one last thing is I don't know. This is just something I wanted to ask you about. Were you, over the last couple of days, because I saw a lot of people who, at least they've told me, that they didn't interact with you or anything. They just perhaps liked a couple of tweets, and because they had liked those tweets, you went ahead and blocked them preemptively. Mm-hmm. Were you, like, policing the likes of certain posts and, like, looking at what people have liked to block them?
Well, I can't police people's likes, but I do block liberally, yes.
So, but you were going into posts that were speaking ill about you, and then went into them and blocked all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I liberally block people. Absolutely, always have.
Okay. Well, I probably do the same thing. All right. Thanks, Jane.
Yeah, I mean, appreciate your comments. Always open to hearing your critiques. I think that people, over time will find that one of my friends in the chat made the point that, and I'm not talking about you, Michael, I'm talking about a lot of the people that I end up blocking or whatever. I mean, I've done this long enough that I can usually spot pretty good with gut instinct people that are not going to be rational in their discourse. So people that, for example, say, like there was a Catholic dude saying, "Oh, this guy was an incel all the way up until age 40, and then he got married." No, wasn't an incel, right? So in other words, that kind of a person, I immediately blocked that guy, right? Like, I wasn't an incel. I was, going after women all the time. Totally not true. That's not what an incel is, right? So way, way, way off. But that's not a rational person. That's somebody just completely repeating total nonsense. A lot of times it's trad cats that I know who they are. I've seen the same trad cat 100 times. They're mad about X, Y, Z. And I block these people because, let me give another example. There was a woman that I blocked recently who had this, she sent me this wall of text about how, because I responded to a person who was supposedly 15, no idea who this, nothing in his profile indicated what his age was. Some dude just talking smack. Because I responded to the dude and asked him if he wanted to come have this conversation, I was very close to cyberbullying, and she knew a person who had unalived themselves because of cyberbullying, and that I was on the track of doing so. I'm like, what? First of all, Twitter is a million people sounding off all the time. And so every day there's people talking smack, first of all. So the idea that, like, I can't handle it when people are angry at me or whatever. Dude, I've been doing this for over 10 years, okay? There have been people calling me names for over 10 years. In fact, the trad cats were sharing the screenshot of me making a joke from 10 years ago the other day, right? Still using 10-year-old stuff where I'm obviously joking, and they're trying to make me into this, like, druggie or whatever because of a stupid, obvious joke comment from 10 years ago on YouTube. So they like to recycle that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I'm absolutely going to block a person saying he's a 40-year-old incel. Why would I even waste my time with that kind of person? Another reason that I block people is that a lot of these people are subversive, and they will actually go through your feed. They'll go way back trying to find dirt or whatever. I'm going to make it as hard as possible for that person to engage in that kind of activity, right? Trying to go back and find comments from 10 years. Did he make a joke 10 years ago? We could try to cancel him. All that kind of, because that's what these people do. So I'm not going to make it easy for them to try to do that stuff. So anyway, yeah, that's, and my life is always a lot easier when I block these lunatics. So those are the kinds of activities that immediately kind of key me into why I would block somebody right away. And in my experience, what happens is people that do want to come back and listen, like maybe they're new to orthodoxy, they think that I'm just causing problems or being mean to people. And then 2-3 years later, they realize, oh no, he was right about everything. Like, he wasn't being mean. There's a bunch of idiots and goofuses in this world as well. And he was talking about all these people, 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? And then they say, hey, like we had multiple people today that reached out and said, hey, would you unblock me? Because turns out everything you said was right, and I just thought you were being mean 3, 4, or 5 years ago. So this is a common occurrence. But that also lets me know that that's a person who really does want to be reconciled, because if they'll go to the trouble to reach out through a proxy to talk it out, then I know they're probably really wanting to do it. So that's another reason why blocking works. Ellie. Gotta unmute. Ellie, you gotta unmute if you want to talk.
Oh, hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Oh, I have to speak English. I'm not very good in speaking English because I'm from Germany. And what I want to say, I've forgotten it. You are not mean, Jay. I know your work, and I know the work of Richard Grove, and I watched it a long time, and I read all your books and Rachel's books, but the people are dumbed down. What was his name? Gatto. He wrote a book, Dumbing Down Society.
John Taylor Gatto, yeah.
And I think we see now the results of that the society is so dumbed down. You said a half hour ago that people are mean to you because you are talking with Rachel, you are talking with Alex Jones, and this is Konditionierung. I don't know the English word. And this is the result we are seeing, what Gatto said, in my opinion. What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, I don't really care that people are mad or whatever, because I hear this every day and I've been hearing it for years. So none of this is going to alter my day-to-day operation or what I do on a daily basis. Every now and then I'm happy to address it and open it up to people that want to converse about the topics or the issues or whatever their real issues are. But I'm not hurt that guy said what he said. It doesn't bother me. Yeah, so no, I don't think it's not mean. Like, I don't use this term. People who are mean to me. I mean, this just sounds like things from the playground. Like, you're mean to me. And it's like, no, it's not being mean to you. So people don't understand there's actual subversive people. And it's not mean to call them out when they've displayed open subversive activities for many years. And then so you'll notice the pattern too was that initially it was like, oh, you were bad for doing that. And then it turns out that what I said was correct. And it's like, oh, well, he's not that way anymore. But then it turns out he is still saying bad things and bad advice. Oh, well, but it's the way you did it. Okay, but so at no point was it where I actually did something wrong. It's all this subjective interpretation of what constitutes meanness. Well, I'm just going to attribute to you motives that I don't know and say that your motives are bad, which I can't know. And that way, nobody can prove or disprove it, and it just hangs out there that you're mean. But meanness, just like other sort of leftist tactics, it's always this subjective thing about the way that the argument or the discussion made me feel. And I'm not saying that again. That the point isn't that there's no such thing as feelings, and feelings but they don't have a place in this type of discourse or in this kind of an issue. When it comes to public issues relating to truth, falsehood, deception, people being fraudulent, people being sort of a form of con men out there. Okay, it's not an issue of mean and how it makes me feel and this kind of stuff. I'm sorry, it's just not. That's not what this is about. Let's see, music. You got to unmute if you want to talk. Thank you for those comments, by the way. Your English was good from German. I understood everything except that last word. Go ahead, music. You unmuted. Thank you guys for those super chats too, by the way. We'll get to those here in a minute. So, music, did you want to talk? You unmuted and then you muted. All right. We'll move on to the next person. Who can I be mean to? I just sit around thinking about who can I be mean? Because I don't get fulfillment in the day unless I'm mean to a person. And let's see. So we got to do with a Freemason symbol. Who wants to talk? I can't imagine that the Freemason symbol guy is going to be relevant. I'm not knocking you, but like, it's a topic about like discourse and who's mean and who's not. Jamerican, what's up? You got to unmute. All right. We'll move on to the next person. So, Novus Arcus. What's up, dude? Go ahead, Novus.
Yeah, one thing I did see around criticism is that there were a couple people said whenever they mentioned the Western Orthodox Rite that you blocked them. I'm not sure that's real, but I did see that a couple times. Can you speak to that?
No, I don't ever recall blocking people just because of the Western Rite, but there does appear there has appeared these groups of weirdos in the last few months, particularly, who have deemed themselves to be Orthodox Twitter theologians who believe that penal substitutionary atonement, the way that Protestants speak of it, is the Orthodox doctrine. And so primarily it was Father Deacon Ananias that had a series of Twitter disputes and spats and debates with those people. But although to me it's an indicator that there might be problems, I don't think that there's any inherent problem with the Western Rite itself. But it does attract a lot of people who think that it's their job to, in some way, say, for example, everything that Augustine says is the Orthodox position. When Augustine says unbaptized infants are damned, that's the Orthodox position. And it's not. And these people don't know what they're talking about. The same people don't have any blessing to be on there talking about and teaching all this stuff. And no, I stand by that's a red flag. But I don't just block people because it says Western Rite. In fact, one of my good friends and a priest that I have at his parish is also a friend. They're Western Rite. So Western Rite row corps is usually pretty good. I just think the danger with Western Rite is that, particularly under other jurisdictions, at times they can be very ecumenist. And so they think that they have good motivations, but I think the motivations, while well-intentioned, are wrong. They'll try to bring in Sacred Heart devotion and all this post-Tridentine Roman Catholic stuff, which is not appropriate for Orthodoxy. So I stand by that for sure. Novus, are you there?
Oh, yeah, that's just what I was looking for, that response, because I did see that out there, and they said Western Rite, he just blocked you, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. It sounds like there are other issues.
No, it's because there's a specific group of people that push the same stuff, and they're all in the same circles. And so if I see that they're in that group, that hive, no, I immediately block those people because they're, again, multiple year problem people. So again, it's nothing to do with, I just want to randomly be mean to somebody today. I'll pick this dude. No, it's these people are, again, like 7-year problem people. And their refuge is Twitter. And then you can tell, by the way, that when they get on Twitter and their stuff is against me, they're all united with all the Roman Catholic butthurt people. So that's a big red flag. Hick. What's up, Hick? You got to unmute, dude.
Hey, Jay, how you doing? Happy
What's up?
Friday.
Yes, sir. What's going on?
A few things wanted to say. Love when Jamie comes on with you on the Friday 4th hour. And first person you brought up, a lot of times these rooms, they spiral down into some kind of COVID room. But I wanted to make 2 comments on COVID that we forget that the World Military Games were happening in Wuhan in late 2019 and the rollout of 5G in Wuhan. And not a whole lot of people talk about that. That wasn't my question, but I just wanted to make those comments. I was curious because, I love how much material you cover. I was watching The Dream by David Icke, and he's kind of like he's like a trailblazer in some ways. It's like you, Alex, the countless names that are kind of shifting the paradigm or people's flexibility. It's like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, maybe you can by shifting the paradigm. And I was wondering if you had watched his newest documentary, The Dream.
I haven't, so I have not.
And what you thought of it? I could post it if you want. And then, it'd be awesome if you could cover.
Okay.
One thing that he does
cover. Hold on. I'm not trying to be rude. So tonight's discussion is not that topic. I will check out the documentary that you're saying. So I'm not trying to be rude to you. Appreciate your comments. I will have to look at that though. I think that I've never interacted with David Icke over the years. Back in like 2012, 13, 14, he used to post a lot of my essays and articles. There's a lot of sort of Gnostic ideas and sort of Buddhist ideas that I would disagree with, but don't know David Icke, haven't interacted with him, but back in the day he did used to share my articles. John Kresh, what's up? You gotta unmute. So we did get a fat super chat from Majorian. Thank you for that. I will look into this right here. Go ahead. What's up, John?
Yeah, you doing, bro?
Hey.
I have really been following a lot of YouTubes for a while now. I actually found out about InfoWars through you. And I've been on the ride ever since. Unfortunately, waking up.
Oh, well, that's great to hear, man. Appreciate those comments. Yeah, but tonight I'm not trying to be rude. Like, the topic is people who take issue with me or stuff I've said or whatever. We did get a big fat super chat, so let me talk about that real quick. And Majorian says, hey, what do you think about the CNP and the World Future Society? Now, I do think the CNP was this World Anti-Communist League, Iran-Contra connected sort of right-wing foil to the CFR, right? So that was the purpose of the creation of the CNP. I know that it's played a lot of a role in the background for neocon stuff. A lot of people who talk about the CNP, though, they always want to make it like the real thing that's running everything in the background, and like, oh, it's not the CFR, it's not the Trilateral Commission, it's not. They want to turn it into a left-right thing in terms of globalism. But I mean, the idea, and a lot of those people, I'm not saying this is about you, Majorian, but a lot of those people say, oh, it's really the right-wing Christian theocracy that's running America. Really? I mean, that's just ludicrous to me. The idea that the real power structure is a right-wing theocracy. That just to me seems absolutely insane to me. But all the people who are always fussing about the CNP and how, oh, Dyer doesn't cover the CNP. I mean, I don't think that it's that powerful of an entity today. It's not like we're actually being run by evangelical theocrats. I do think that the CNP was set up and was intended to be this sort of right-wing foil to CFR, and that, if I recall, like Oliver North and people like that had connections to it. I think CNP, like if you read the Collins Brothers book that we've been talking about, they later talk about a lot of the CNP connections to Ollie North and that kind of stuff. But yes, you said let's look at the World Futurist Society, and I'm on their website. Let's see, can we get like our approach: educate and bring together many people throughout the world to give a new system for civilization and well-being. Engage as many visionaries as possible. Your journey begins here. Synthesize intelligence for the Civ Type 1 forum. So like a Type 1 civilization is what they're claiming to push for, this sort of futuristic, like tech utopia type of thing, I'm guessing. They're talking about the COOF. Here's a bunch of hip, cool Gen Xers that are fans of it, millennials. Who the heck even are these people? Literally a bunch of people I've never heard of. Let's see. Do they have... So there's not a whole lot on this website. Let's see if we can find Established in 1967. Let's look at their Wikipedia just for an overview. Futurist magazine. So is this like are they connected to transhumanism? Futurist magazine, 1967. Edward Cornish, 1967 to 2015. Bi-monthly mag. Learning to talk like a futurist magazine. Okay, so yeah, this just looks like some kind of a pushing. Okay, let's see, prominent members: Carl Sagan, Ray Kurzweil, Neil deGrasse Tyson. So this is like normie scientism man pushing transhumanism is what it looks like. So that's the World Future Society. Now, are you saying they have a connection to the CNP, or you just wanted me to talk about both of those? So, Council for National Policy. Let's see what they're up to. CNP. This is supposed to be the big conservative normie think tank. It's Mike Pence, a bunch of the people you would expect. Normie tier, rhino type stuff, I guess. I mean, CNP Action. Who's involved in this? Charlie Kirk's on there. Phyllis Schlafly, who passed away in 2016. I mean, again, I just don't see, like, yeah, these are kind of like normie conservatives, but is that who's really running the world? Is that the theory here? Thank you for the super chat, but I just don't see that. I mean, the CFR and Trilateral Commission, they seem to be calling way more shots than these people, in my view. So, I mean, Brzezinski, Kissinger, right? I mean, these are staples of both conservatives and, neocon and liberal governments. I just don't see Philip Schlafly as really the danger to America. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I mean, she's dead anyway, so. Joe Lilly, what's up, Joe? You gotta unmute when you get on. Ellie sends $5. It says, hi, friends. Hi, Ellie. Ellie sends another $5. Thank you so much, Ellie. Appreciate that. I'm assuming that's the German Ellie that chimed in earlier with her comments. Appreciate that. Ellie says again for $5 that she believes that a lot of the issues today with low-level discourse has to do with people being dumbed down. And yeah, a lot of their responses are based on emotions and feeling, not actually based on any of the issues. And so, for example, warning people about a person, proclaiming to be a life coach who's going to give people orthodox spiritual advice and all this stuff, who in themselves seems to be really problematic and struggling with issues. It just doesn't make any sense. And so if I dare to reply to the people who, for years have talked about how bad I am, oh, look how bad he is. Look, he dares to reply to the people that are out there grifting people. So that person dropped off. Zargons, what's up? Go ahead. You gotta unmute.
Hello.
What's up?
Hey, I was wondering, since you studied psychological warfare, do you think the National Socialist movement on Twitter, I'm not that, by the way, but I'm just asking if you think all this anti-Jew stuff on Twitter is going to reach a censorship wall eventually with internet service providers like AT&T, Comcast? Do you think they will eventually put a stop to the anti-Jew hate that is rising?
It's very possible. I mean, we've been warned, I think, by people like AJ for a long time that internet providers might be the next angle by which censorship occurs, right? So maybe seizing domains, that kind of stuff. So it's very possible. I interviewed Roger Stone today, in fact, on what he expects in 2024. he said they might try to do, RACE based riots, that kind of stuff. They might roll that out. There might be another sort of coup. So any of those things could also provide the pretext for clamping down on free speech, right? So you could have people, engaged in rioting and those kinds of activities, and then, there's a national crisis, we're going to have to lock down everything. I mean, hopefully Elon will be committed to maintaining the openness of free speech, but there might be situations where there's going to be some excuse on the basis of, look at all the Twitter hate, we gotta lock it down. I wouldn't be surprised if something like that doesn't happen. Now, Harry Ludwig is calling in. I appreciate Harry. He's a longtime listener. Harry, am I mean? Have I been too mean to you, Harry?
Hi.
Hey, what's up?
Just coincidentally, going on Zargon's comments, just not a disagreement necessarily, but just wondering why you don't cover bagel-related issues and say E. Michael Jones. The revolutionary spirit is really up your alley, you'd think. And have you ever covered it? And his new book, The Holocaust Narrative, is excellent. I just went through it.
Right. Well, so when I'm on YouTube, I cover things that are YouTube friendly, right? So if I'm on another platform where those things are allowable, then people make those topics usually available. I just did a really in-depth breakdown of Jeff Stein McGethry. I've been talking about Whitney Webb's book for the last 2 or 3 weeks nonstop since all the Jeff Stein McGethry stuff. So really, not everything can be talked about on every platform. And, it's been that way for a long time, right? So if you go, though, to, for example, Rockfin, I did a whole history of the Israel-Palestine conflict, did a whole breakdown of that. I don't have any personal interactions or anything problematic with E. Michael Jones. I did offer him a debate many years ago because I felt that a lot of his theological positions were wrong. He declined, I think, about 3 of those offers. I feel like the more fundamental issues theologically would be the things I'd want to disagree and debate with. For example, other Catholic writers this last week were making quite a fuss about his defense of the Vatican II documents, his defense of what's going on with the Skittles blessings. So I think those things are valid critiques of what he talks about. And I think a lot of people become one-issue people, right? Like that's the only issue they're interested in covering. I've never been a one-issue person. So, if people want to make it one issue, Harry, I know that you, if I recall, you're a Calvinist. You don't like the theological stuff that I cover. Well, but for me, that's where I start my paradigmatic approach. So, for example, if I'm going to be interacting with a Roman Catholic, that it's going to start with the theological disagreements. It's not going to be a question of, well, but he wrote this book that's super based on blah, 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 right? So, because a lot of people, for example, that are looking into orthodoxy right now, like there's a lot of tradcasts that have a distaste for Rome and Francis. And so what's happening is they're thinking, oh, I want to find based trad church. Now, inherently, that's not the problem everybody should want to have the correct, true theological position, right? But the problem is that people are thinking, I'm just going to transfer my based trad political Catholicism over into orthodoxy. That will now be my new based trad political movement. And the problem is that it's different in orthodoxy. Like it's a whole other approach. Like you don't, it's not politics first. It's theology first. So it's the other way around. So a lot of people who are into a lot of the public comment sphere about politics and that kind of stuff, they're like, why do you always talk about the theology stuff? You won't talk about the moral social issues. Well, because I think the moral social issues are downstream from the theological issues, and most people think that culture is first and everything else is downstream, right? And people should be, perceptive enough by now to figure out that certain platforms allow certain topics and others don't. So everybody in some degree engages in abiding by the TOS, because if you don't, you basically lose all your platforms. So what's the point of losing all the platforms? I don't understand it. Kaiser, what's up? So today's topic, though, is not the Amish question. Today's topic is not. It's the issues related to the drama of the past 3 days.
So, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
I talked to you before. I actually had an idea, something that's kind of turned into a little bit of a in-group joke. Are you familiar with the fashion police by chance?
No.
So this is a real thing, and this is what I always tell people when they talk about these global conspiracies. And they go, "Oh, this can't be so. This can't be so. This can't be so." So, well, you got to think, like, if those people aren't like Europe, there's a lot of changes that happened. One of the big ones was they said, "Hey, you don't have to pay me, and taxes are no longer from your basically your crops, but in gold and paid in cash." And at that time, you suddenly had peasants who were making money, and they had nice clothes. And what was basically happening was these nobles were looking down, going, "Wait a minute, dude, I don't look much better than these peasants." And what they started doing was having what's called the fashion police, where they'd go up to peasants and take their clothes away if they were too rich for what the noble or whatever the noble person believed. And I think you see that today, right? Where that is what this is. Where it's like I don't really care that you have an electric car. What I care about is I'm the one that's allowed to have the Range Rover. Thank you. Like, you're not allowed to have that stuff. This is against the fashion police. Someone stop him. Like he's flying around on a plane. You hear about this all the time. Commercial planes need to be shut down. But your private jets, that's different. It's different. It's okay. But that commercial plane, though, that's a bit too much.
So are you talking about like the austerity World Economic Forum's designs to like shut everything down, and you don't need a wood burning stove, and you don't need a gasoline engine? Is that what you're talking about, like that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what I mean to say is basically that life has gotten good enough in some ways. Obviously, it's bad in others. I'm not trying to say that everything's perfect, but that the average person today lives better, frankly, than a king did in medieval Europe. If I took my ancestor and say, "Hey, Charlemagne, check out my house," he'd be like, "This is insane." He would be in shock.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an element of it, and that
the luxury.
That emerged.
So these people who are obsessed with luxury,
right? Yeah, I think that
these people that are obsessed with luxury.
Well, there's a delay. Go ahead.
I said these people who are obsessed with luxury have the fashion police, and the new fashion police, of course, is this modern austerity movement to be like, "Oh, get these peasants off the internet."
Yeah, you'll own nothing, you'll have nothing. Exactly. What Ida Alkin says. Shout out to Tristan in the chat, because he hit me to Ida Alkin in her circular economy lecture from years ago at the TED Talk, where she's one of these WEF sponsored people. About how, you don't need to own anything, just rent everything, right? You just rent people's whitey tidies in the neighborhood. You won't have your own underwear. You could just wear your neighbor's underwear when he's done with it, right? And to be fair, Tristan has sent me some of his ladies' wear, some of his underwear, some of his boxers. They do fit very nicely. I do have to admit that it is tempting to go with the circular economy shared whitey tidies model, given that I've worn a lot of Tristan's undies. It is tempting. However, I still like having my own whitey tidies. I like my underoos. I don't want the Klaus issued underoos, and that's just what it amounts to, even though it's very tempting. So, yes, look up the circular economy. I think ultimately, to be serious, that the motivations for why they want this stuff is hatred. I mean, it's a demonic hatred of humanity. That's the real motivations behind the WEF and all that. Maybe I should transition over into that, and it's enough of this Twitter drama stuff. Nobody really cares about it anyway. I mean, look, all the Twitter drama, like, people care about this stuff for like 1 or 2 days, right? And then people forget about it a week later. Does everybody remember Cake Gate? Remember Calendar Gate? And then Boob Gate, Cake Boob Girl or whatever? Everybody's already forgotten about this. So in 2 weeks, nobody's going to remember the Twitter drama. But I do at some instances like to pause and comment on it and talk about what's going on and why is there all this, why is everybody hating on you? Whatever. Oh, bro, you can't take it. Your feelings are hurt. Look, if I was going to retire from internet because of mean comments, I would have retired a long time ago. Okay? Not retiring from interneting because of, quote, mean comments. Let's see. Nikolai. What's up, Nikolai? DC Woodworking since $3. Shout out to DC Woodworking. Appreciate that. Super chat as we... Go ahead. You gotta...
Sorry, there's a delay.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right, cool. Yeah, so I just had two thoughts and then one thing that I wanted to get your perspective on real quick. So for the Twitter drama stuff, I think it's mostly a nothing burger, right? I think people can have valid feelings about something, but not understand the underlying context, right? Kind of like you went into detail earlier.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing is actually something that was brought up earlier by another speaker is that I think people are just kind of softer nowadays.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
they can't handle jibbing and jabbing like they used to. Like I grew up with my father just roasting me hardcore. And
Yeah.
now, if my dad did that to half the people on the street nowadays, they would go home crying, right? It's
Exactly.
Just, it's really
Yes.
bad.
Let me give you an example of this to where... So Eric Ibarra, we've made jokes about Eric Ibarra for years, and he's still butthurt about it. He was still tweeting about it yesterday or today, right? Complaining that people, quote, make internet cartoon strips about him. When I first interacted with Tim Gordon in 2020, I made a video making fun of him, right? So we had a Twitter spat. He sent me a bunch of fart memes, which was kind of funny. And then I made a video making fun of him, calling him the Creed dude. Tim's response was not to cry about it, not to make 24-hour live streams refuting me. Tim's response was to laugh about it and reach out and say he thought it was funny. Okay. Then Tim and I got to be buddies and then I met Tim in person and had a few. I didn't have a beer, but Tim was drinking a few beers, and we had a good chat, hanging out over at Elliot Hulse's house. Tim is just a normal, regular dude, and regular dudes make jokes about each other. Like I just made a joke about Tristan. Tristan knows that I love his stuff. I owe him my life because he introduced me to the diet that saved my guts, literally. So I love that dude. And he knows that if I joke about underwear, it's absurd. Obviously, I'm not wearing Tristan's underwear. I do wear his sports bras. That's different. It's not underwear. It's sports attire. Okay. So, and he knows that. He knows that it's a compliment. Dudes take it as a compliment when dudes joke about each other's stuff, right? About their life, their family, it's funny. It's actually funny. Everybody loves the banter that Tristan and I do. Tim and I have the exact same dude bro banter. It's just normal amongst dudes. That has been turned into like toxic masculinity. And it also shows, though, a lot of the soft, fragile people like Lofton and Ibarra who have cried for years because somebody made a joke about them, right? That's why I opened this stream with playing the Fat Boys song because of the rap battle jokes. I mean, I think that's funny, right? People have made...
That was hilarious.
People made memes of me as the frog, the debate me bro frog. I think that's funny. I don't care. I've shared the freaking meme they made. So, Go ahead.
Just one. Yeah, I just had one other thing. I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but have you done a deep dive into kind of the background of like bricks and what that's kind of gonna look like, or what you think it might look like down the road? I know you do a lot with Alex Jones. I haven't caught everything, so I was just curious if you've commented on that and if you have any stuff that you might want to.
Right. So Colonel Douglas McGregor's son, Cameron McGregor, is a good buddy of mine, and we've done several interviews. And if you go watch the Cameron McGregor interviews, he goes really deep into bricks because he's like, that's his forte. He's all about economics. He's all about Bitcoin. He's all about analyzing, international banking structure. He knows way more about that than me. So I would just defer to Cameron.
Cool.
He's on Twitter. His blog or his Substacker blog is Men in the City. So check out his stuff because he knows a lot more about bricks than I do. But no, I haven't actually dived super deep into bricks. I don't really know exactly. I mean, there's other, even ortho canonists on here, people like that. They know probably a lot more about bricks than I do. Profoundly retort, we'll say. What's up, profoundly retort? Ellie, let's see. Ellie sends another $5. Thank you. American Squidward sends $2. Greystream J, thank you for talking about the incrementalism issues recently. God bless. Yeah, I think a lot of people don't see why Overton Window incrementalism is a problem. But look, just look up Overton Window and you'll notice it. Profound, what's up, Profoundly? How you doing?
Hey, Jay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this feels kind of ill-timed coming after the last tune-in, but I'm very much pro-banter. This is not a soft boy question or anything like that.
Okay.
I agree with you wholeheartedly when it comes to the responsibility of men to think, analyze objectively, because I think our role in the world is to be truthful in that manner. And I think for men, that sort of objectivity is a imperative.
Right.
That truthfulness is imperative.
Right. I agree.
But you do see in the saints this sort of feeling of tenderness or soft-heartedness in a way. But in their lives, it has no contradiction with the truth. They are tender and
Are you talking about like saints and elders? You're cutting out. I can hardly hear what you're saying.
Oh, sorry.
Who'd you say?
Yes, just saints in general.
Okay.
I'm not talking about a specific one. There doesn't appear to be a contradiction in their life. They can be objective. They don't have to lie to make somebody feel better. They just do both at the same time, right?
Yeah. Well, also a lot of saints. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you, your take, like that's just in real life. Like dealing with people face to face, it's easier to be kind and truthful. But online, when you're limited in your interactions with people, is it even possible to strike a balance between those things? This isn't a calling out or anything like that. This is just because I think a lot of the times that you get flack is in cases where it's well, what would you have him do? Would you have him lie to save people's feelings? It's in real life, it doesn't seem like that's really a problem that comes up, but online, it's can you even strike that balance? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that it's the nature of the internet. There was a guy who was, I forget the name of that guy, but he's the guy who is the former reality star guy who became Orthodox, and he was on, I think, Father Turbo Qualls' podcast. He was making some really good comments about how the internet and interactions on the internet and everything on the internet, it's all abstracted. And it's not inherently bad or wrong. I'm not saying that people can't be doing things on the internet. Obviously, I'm here on it, but the danger is that you get this abstracted, non-physical way of living. And for people who, here's the irony too, is we've always told people, even from the beginning of the Discord, even 2018, when the first people who were clergy came into that Discord, we were always saying that you can't just make this an internet thing, right? That's not Orthodox to just be internet. And that's weird because even though that was always what we were saying, when people like Father Damick started criticizing us, they were saying that we were making it only an internet thing, which was never the case. And the irony of that too is that it was a lot of the people in those sphere who were actually making Orthodoxy an internet-only thing during the coup when they shut the churches down, which is never what we supported. So we always opposed those very things. And moved it because it's a Protestant sort of abstraction type of thing. And the people that are having a lot of problems on Twitter that don't like what I talk about or whatever, like those Western Rite people, a lot of those people have converted out of either Rome or Protestantism. And their view is, I don't need priests. I don't need clergy. I have a direct line to me and the books. Like, I read the church fathers, so I don't care what Father Deacon Ananias says about that you need to be under spiritual father. Why do I need a gatekeeper? It's me and the lives of the saints. It's me and the church fathers. That's Protestant. All that stuff is Protestant. And that's why the way those people operate is in this detached, abstracted way. And it's so weird because people say that what I'm doing is this internet abstracted thing, and that's always what we were opposed to. It's just bizarre. And every time, like last night, FDA did like a 2-hour discussion in their Discord, and his whole message was that like you can't make this an internet thing. Now, some people don't have Orthodox churches, so the only outlet they have is online stuff. And if that's your situation, okay. But to people who, are 19, 20, 21, 22, they just converted, they start reading the canons, then they get on Twitter and decide that it's their job to then start telling married people what to do in the bedroom. And like from day one, we always said, don't do that. You're a spurg. It doesn't make sense. And so all of the things that people criticize what I'm doing or what we do is the very things that we've always said not to do. So I actually agree with those people, but they attribute that to me, like as if I wanted to set up an ortho bro movement. Like there's still these like boomers that think that I wanted to set up some ortho bro political movement. Never had any idea about any of that. Don't want to do that. And in fact, it just makes me more and more not want to talk about theology on the internet at all. Why? Not because of the problem of theology, but because it's like the Western Rite. It's like the Western Rite itself isn't any kind of problem. It's that weird, spurgy people who have no conception of, knowing and studying these things for a long time. They're not qualified. That's the point that FDA was making, right? It's like people who, imagine going to a surgeon and saying, look, I've read the surgery books. I read an anatomy book and I know how to do a surgery. Now, you might have studied this and been doing it for 20 years, but I just noticed in the book, there's a place where it says that what you're doing is wrong. So you should actually let me do the surgery because even though you're a 20-year veteran at it, I've read the book. And if you disagree, are you a gatekeeper? Why are you a surgery gatekeeper, bro? It's all Protestant. The internet is like a electronic Protestantism almost. Literally. It's like abstracted Neoplatonic Protestantism in the ether, right? So again, like we've always said, you can't do it that way. You got to like go be in an actual Orthodox church. Anyway, but separate from all of that is the other issue that you pointed out, which is, men's issues, right? Masculinity and like anything that sets boundaries is perceived as toxic, which is just insane to me. It's like just crazy. What? And the other thing too is that you'll notice that a lot of times it's never about the actual topics or the issues in question. It immediately turns into why you're a bad person. Right. And that's a surefire sign when things go ad hominem that the opposition, the people who are angry at you, don't actually have a point or an argument. It's just a way to deflect over into, but you're still bad because, Vocab Malone clipped you from 5 years ago saying a guy was an idiot in the debate. So see, you're still bad. So it's like, even though it's like one instance, like a snippet of a not even a formal debate from 5 years ago, right? There's a snippet. You're still accountable and you're still guilty for calling someone an idiot 5 years ago. The irony too is that the people who would call that out are like 10 times more venomous on Twitter. Like talking about my wife, talking about, he's a Satanist, his wife's a witch. They'll say like 100 times worse stuff than me calling them an idiot. This guy, not even them, but this guy 5 years ago, an idiot, right? So they'll say things 100 times worse, but it's like, yeah, but I'm justified in it because you're me. So I can do all of this to you, and if you dare to reply, oh look, you're bullying. So it's the meme of they cry out, right? as they strike you. Epiphany something. I can't read the rest of the name. What's up?
Am I on?
Yeah.
Hi. Actually, just what you were saying, I was wondering your thoughts on the role of people's like past sins and faults that are like publicly available, because you were sharing like the pics of him in like goth makeup.
Right.
And on the one end, you know, it's, I don't know, I don't have strong feelings about Thaddeus. So on the one end, it's like, well, you know, if he's apologized for it, should there be leeway? But of course, if it's relevant to the public scandal that you're, you know, accusing him of, then maybe it's, you know, you're trying to make that link. So what is that balance that you're trying to strike between things that are scandalous, but then if, you know, they've publicly repented of it?
Right. So the point of that was not merely, oh, let me find dirt on this person. So this is a person who, again, so was in the Discord in 2018, left because he felt that debate was mean, right? And fine, he can do that. He publicly took issue with a lot of things. And what happened back at that time was I reached out to him and I said, hey, come have a discussion on the Discord and let's be reconciled. I immediately tried to be reconciled with that guy because I don't have any personal issues with him at the time. He came on the Discord. We all agreed to be good. Within no time at all, maybe a few weeks later, he had aligned himself with other people that were booted from the Discord. This is the consistent pattern that we see. And so it just turned sour really quick. And, I'm going to set up like the nice Discord where you don't have to deal with people that do debates and this kind of stuff. Again, so we ignored all of that for a long time. Of course, he consistently built his model of being an Orthodox life coach on the Enneagram, which is a fraudulent occult thing. It's not anything to do with Orthodoxy. And so even at the time, there was questions about his motivations and the permission to do these things. Because again, like everybody's going to be held accountable in this world of Orthodoxy for the things that they talk about publicly and what they say, right? You can't, it's not a situation where you just start your own, like, I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to be an Orthodox spiritual life coach. Like it's that's not a thing. It doesn't work. Like this is not the religion where you do that. That's like a Protestant type of thing. So, in regard to him, you know, he kept at this, and then somebody sent me his memes yesterday. Obviously, it's still about, you know, the stuff that that we talk about. Oh, if the online world of Orthodoxy is this hive of crazy conspiracy people, but when you go to the Orthodox Church, it's not actually that way. That's, again, it's a counter signaling against what we do. And yeah, it kind of set me off because I'm tired of this dude. Like this dude has been at this for, it's almost 6 or 7 years now of the same types of stuff. And so, yeah, I pointed out that, look, and people sent me stuff that he had said post-conversion. So it's not just a matter of, did he one time, cross-dress or do something like that. It's that post-conversion, he's still advising young people on gender issues. And the stuff that he said was not correct. Okay. So he's going to publicly advise teenagers who are having dysphoria issues. Why would we think this person's qualified to do this? Like, who qualified this guy as a life coach? Life coach is an obvious like grifter thing. Okay, no, there shouldn't. I mean, unless you have like the permission to be. I don't even know what even is a life coach. What the heck even is that? I don't even know what it is. It's like a made up, like new age grifty thing. So what even is an Orthodox life coach? Now, there can be mentors and that kind of stuff, but why would we think that guy is qualified to be that thing? And the question then is always, what person from the hierarchy blessed you or gave you this ministry, and who are you under and held accountable to? And what we constantly see is that they never say who they're accountable to because they're probably not accountable. That's the point. And it's the same with the other people that I mentioned earlier in their Western Rite Twitter spheres, right? So one of those individuals, I emailed their priest and he got mad. So, he's trying to dox me. No, you can't be a public teacher and telling people that you're Western Rite. I emailed his priest. His priest said he's not even Western Rite. What? So he's painting himself as, and he's like 22, 23. It's like, none of that makes any sense. Okay, so it's a recurring pattern that's happened for multiple years. And it's not that you can't be young and talk about these things. It's not that you can't have a Twitter profile and talk about theology. The point is that there's parameters and there's accountability that everybody has to abide by, that I'm accountable to. People hold me accountable, right? And it's not even just my spiritual father, right? FDA, he sees most of what I do. He calls me out if I do something wrong or if I'm too rude or whatever to people. I've been called out many times over the last 6 or 7 years. But the people that we're talking about, there's no identifiable persons that they're accountable to. And yet there's still public grifting people with ministries representing supposedly the Orthodox Church, which I don't even do. See, the funny thing is I don't give people spiritual advice. Never told anybody anything about what they should or shouldn't do in the bedroom. I mean, to me, that's crazy. As a lay person, it makes no sense to do that. I think that's crazy.
No, JJ. If you're Orthodox, that means sleeping with your wife is always sinful, and you just need to be an incel on Twitter, and then you don't understand. You don't have
right. But see, those dudes, some of those dudes are actually on Twitter saying that husbands and wives need to sleep in different beds, and like they're like going to monastic penitentials and trying to apply monastic penitential disciplines to married people, which is just crazy. It's ludicrous. I'm not talking about Thaddeus. I'm talking about the other people.
Yeah, I know. But thanks, Jay. That's really helpful.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question, right? So I understand. So people don't know the background. They think that these people are just sort of like random people that I just chose to, I'm going to be mean to this dude today. Here's a dude I could be mean to today. And it's not true. Every one of the people, for the most part, maybe not every single one, but most of the people in question that keep being recurring problem people are 6-7 year problem people who are mad they got booted from Discord 6 years ago because they probably deserve to be booted from Discord because they act like unstable weirdos. Unknown since $5. Here's $5 for being a meanie. Oh, he called me a meanie. He called me a meanie. I'm gonna leave the internet. What does Ibarra say? They made mean internet cartoon strips of me. And Ibarra said that his kids saw the mean. He's not talking about. I didn't make any memes of Ibarra, by the way. I later made jokes about Ibarra, but I don't even know what he's talking about when he had this funny comment about they made mean internet cartoon strips of me. He says, my son saw the mean internet cartoon strips. Tag Hua, $5. Orthodox in name, but many of them have a liberal phronema, and they act like having a high follower count means you're punching down if you respond. Right, yeah, so like having a follower count means that everybody's supposed to trash you and you can't reply, right? It's all like BLM activities and the way they spun their anti-cop narratives. That's very perceptive, Tag Hua, because everybody's starting to notice like the mob pile-on attitude. It's exactly SJW approach. And many of the people in the ortho piety signaling sphere on Twitter, the people that like post all their prayers and post how many times they've done Jesus prayer today and pray with me on Twitter, like those are the people who you'll notice act exactly like social justice warriors. And it's because, as David Erhan correctly said the other day, like for them, religion is a performative thing. It's a performative display. It's a performance. It's a thing you go on the internet to do as a performance. You know, somebody you might have heard of talked about this in Matthew 5, right? Or is it Matthew 6, right? Where Jesus says that they disfigure themselves and they appear to be pious and they go and they pray on the street corner so that everybody sees them praying to be highly esteemed amongst people. So it's pretty wild. Jesus actually called this out in the Beatitudes a long time ago. Gary sends $50. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate that. Joe, $5. You should cover the Father Coppelson versus Bertrand Russell debate. There seems like a lot of material is there. Yeah, that is a classic debate. Have you ever interacted with Keith Woods? I messaged Keith a long time ago, maybe a year or two ago, to have discussions and whatnot. And he didn't seem that interested at the time to have those discussions. It seems like he's taking more of a perennialist and Platonic view. I remember, I think when I asked him a couple years ago to chat, he had a perennialist take. So, yeah, that was kind of what I was open to discussing back at the time. But I don't know if he still has that view or not. Archibald McTitty Sprinkles, $5. I'm coaching. Please come sign up for my life coaching pyramid scheme grift. Seriously, thank you for calling out grifters. Thank you. Appreciate that, Archibald. Gen X Mom, $3. 75% of the time what you say is over my head, but you make me laugh really hard 100% of the time. Thank you. Even when you call yourself mean, it makes me laugh. I'm a big J supporter from New England. Thank you, Gen X Mom. Groiper Bin Laden, $3. I noticed that Orthodoxy does seem to attract certain soy men from Protestantism. I will give some credit to this observation because, and I'm not saying it's the fault of Orthodoxy, a lot of what's presented as Orthodoxy is, we don't do what other things do, like debate, and we are pacifist, we're publicly pious, and we're mystical. That selling point does attract potential soy men. You're absolutely right. I have some of these soy men in my parish, and I never saw any of these types when I was a Catholic. Now, I have to disagree with you there because I have seen many trad cat soy men. So I have to disagree with you there. I don't think it's just Protestants. You can have soy men anywhere in today's culture. Ellie sends another $10 and she says, I forgot the name of the international assassin scene in the Vatican. Was that Spectre? Oh, you're talking about so in Spectre, they go to Rome. I don't think it's supposed to be the Vatican, though. I think it's supposed to be a sort of a Club of Rome style setting where Daniel Craig infiltrates Blofeld's meeting. It's in Rome, but I don't think it's supposed to be the Vatican. I posted on Twitter a good assessment of Veliz. He talks about London cooperation. I'm not sure who Veliz is, but I guess you're talking about like the city of London, Quigley's writings about tragedy and hope, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm all about that kind of stuff for sure. Blue Skittles, $5. There was a wake-up call. I had no idea that there were so many soy in Orthodoxy. Stay chalked. Well, one thing I'll say about that is that we don't even know who even knows if half these profiles are even Orthodox. I mean, anybody, like we're talking about with the so-called deacon guy, like anybody can start an Orthodox so-called Twitter. You can just create a Twitter profile, newsflash, and you could start a Twitter profile, call yourself Father Theodore, not referring to anybody I know, just take a very common Greek name, post a bunch of saint memes and quotes, and garner, 1,000 followers within a few months. Then suddenly you could just start saying whatever you want, and people will think that's the Orthodox position. I mean, like, people are overlooking, like, the subversion fed side of this. I mean, come on. People need to stop being so naive. Look, don't just accept because some profile says that it's Orthodox that it is. Black, $3. What would you read? What book would you read to defend monarchy? I don't even know off the top of my head what the defense of... I mean, I don't know that there is like one book that defends monarchy. I mean, read my godfather's article, Dean Arnold. He wrote an article about monarchy and biblical theology. So I'm trying to remember the name of Dean's article. It's called something like Biblical Defense of Monarchy, Dean Arnold. So, I mean, you could just read that article. You don't have to read a giant book on it. Collins, $10. Long story short, but there's basically been a constant issue throughout history. What has been? Do you mean what, soy men? I don't think soy men have actually... I think this is a recent phenomenon. And there's so many soy men for many reasons. There's not just one reason, right? It's not just Protestant converts. There's a generational attack. There's the NWO, toxifying the food and the culture. You got generations of people raised by single moms. You got, like Tristan points out, generations of people raised eating kibble with cartoon characters on the box. I mean, this is going to produce soymen. So that's a huge chunk of it. It's all these things. Being raised on cartoons, being raised on the internet. I mean, it's a bunch of things. So I don't know what, I'm guessing that's what you're talking about. Thank you for the time. I'm not trying to ramble. I'm normal, I promise. Yeah, it's all good. I mean, I don't disagree. I'm not sure what you mean is what issue is it that you're talking about? Because we talked about a bunch of issues. Shining Diamond sends $1. Would Aquinas accept Vatican I or Vatican II? I don't know. I mean, I guess if Aquinas is committed to his belief in the Roman See, then he would have to, right? I mean, yeah, it's a tough, who knows? Probably. Nebulous Encounter, $5. I was recently baptized in Orthodoxy, so if I am ever saying something dumb, correct me. Thank you for everything, Jay. I love you. Well, I'm sure that in your sphere, if you have a good spiritual father, like everybody's going to be, like everybody keeps everybody else in check. That's kind of the way that's synodal government applied across the board, right? So people keep each other in check. You don't have one dude, like Father Wipers. We don't have the Grand Poobah who calls the shots on everything. Now I feel like it won't make sense to talk about the WEF because we didn't even talk about that. This ended up being a totally different discussion topic. Maybe that should be a separate stream. The boy crisis. What's up, boy crisis? You gotta unmute.
Hey Jay, boy crisis here. This is kind of not relevant to your conversation, but just wondering if you saw the senator out of Oklahoma that's abolishing or repealing no-fault divorce, abolishing abortion, and pushing for, of course, equal share parenting in the state of Oklahoma.
No, I didn't, but I heard about something similar in Florida. So, these are definitely movements in the right direction.
Yeah, Dusty Devers is his name, but he's a pastor, and of course he ran for office, but he's got all kinds of witches, feminist groups, a League of Women Voters, National Organization of Women after him, but it's the same thing. And Rachel Wilson and her husband had talked about, what Michael had talked about earlier in this chat, and it really has to do with conflict avoidance, kind of the soy boy type of thing. But it's not, when I grew up, we had a pretty mixed group of friends, and whatever it was, your character flaws, you're tall, we called you lanky. If you're short, we called you a midget. Yeah. If you're, this group, we called you that. And it was all part of, and for men, that's actually part of male bonding. It is. And you kind of see who can jive with you, because I guess in battle, it's kind of programmed, like you want to make sure that you don't surround yourself with weak men, that you're going to have someone that can, fight in your corner. But I love this guy, Dusty Devers, and to me, it's like, well, you can't just lead men and tell them, hey, raise a family and that be over it. But he's actually putting the emphasis on putting Christ back into government, and I love that. So I just wanted to mention that to you.
Yeah, I think that this ties into why they want to so bad have female deacons, so-called deaconesses, and then female priests, is because it's all part of an overall approach to feminizing society on a mass scale, which then makes it much easier to control and engineer. So it's not that the global elite really like women. No. This has to do with control. And so to feminize to make the society based around false notions of egalitarianism and all this kind of stuff is really a social engineering technique and tactic. This ties into, white papers like Changing Images of Man, which we've talked about for many years. All the talks and articles I've done for many years about feminism, how that's a social engineering technique, and Rachel's in the chat. Yeah, she wrote a book on this. How go back to witchcraft. Witchcraft is basically the same modus operandi of feminism, and you couldn't have the Skittles and gender revolutions, so called, had you not first had the feminist revolution. It prepared the way for all the subsequent revolutions. So anyway, Emmanuel sends $5, says the WEF is getting their their group spit on. Well, it does seem like a lot of people are waking up to that, and Elon has called attention to it because Elon has made fun of WEF, and he called into one of those meetings and talked about how globalism is kind of a failure. It doesn't work. Everybody's kind of, Javier Milei, he gave it to him at Davos. There's elements of what Milei says that's good, but come on. This guy is not that based. Wasn't he giving awards to Zelensky? Look, unfortunately, the Latin American, South American, all that domain is really complex because people fall into the dialectic of thinking, well, you're either one of the socialists or you side with the neoliberal corporate vultures, right? And so both of these are bad guys, and that's really difficult to convey because people just sort of immediately fall into good guy, bad guy camps when it comes to Latin South America stuff, which, if you listen to the chats that Tristan and I have done, we just did a long, in-depth analysis of Oliver Stone's Wall Street. Tristan brought up some of this, right? How people think, Javier Milei is good because it's good that, I agree, it's good that he's anti-Fed, right? He's against Federal Reserve, he's against fiat currency, that's good. However, he also seems to then default to siding with the neoliberal vultures who are behind a lot of the problems in those countries as well. So Tristan, I know you're not here, but if you can hop on for a little bit and just kind of comment on that, I would appreciate it, because a lot of people don't understand the Latin South American political sphere, and they just kind of lump it into the good guy libertarian versus evil socialist dialectic. And you have really good insights on this, given Ecuador.
Yeah, hey Jay.
Hey.
What's up, dude? I just want to say that you're super mean, and I disavow you completely.
I'm sorry for wearing your sports bra.
I generally disavow everything you are, do, like, associate with, stand for, or have ever stood for, because you're mean.
I accept your public struggle session. I accept my public penance.
So the Malays are really interesting litmus test for how stupid a lot of the libertarian and, slightly right of center people on the internet are. Uh-huh. I'm sure James Lindsay is, doing backflips, praising how great this guy is, how amazing Javier Milei is. But the libertarians, a lot of these people, remember the libertarian movement in 2008 with Ron Paul, like when a lot of us were kind of involved in that type of stuff.
Yeah.
This was all about end the Fed. It was about actual audit the Fed.
Right.
And the Fed and the private banking cartel of the Federal Reserve, because the whole thing, remember, the Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express.
Right.
Which is true. Right. Now, what's amazing is how much of that vision of and basic understanding of what the real problem with transnational banking is, all that's been lost in the kind of so-called libertarian movement today. And I don't think libertarianism was ever a good idea, a useful movement for anything but throwing open the floodgates, opening the gates of Toledo, so to say, for socialism and communism to come in. But what these people that are praising Milei are saying is this guy wants to end the Argentinian central bank. This is one of their main points of why he's so based and why he's so good. Mm-hmm. Now, the Argentinian central bank is actually run by the state. Like, it's actually owned by Argentina. It's not a private bank like the Federal Reserve. Now, what he wants to do, and he seems like he's kind of backed down off of this. I'm not sure if he'll actually go through with it. But his campaign rhetoric included shutting down their central bank, which is actually run by the state, unlike the Federal Reserve, which is a private banking cartel. And what he wants to do is dollarize them, put them on the dollar, and literally put them under the control of the Fed. That's Javier Milei's program. Total neoliberalism, complete vassal state, Argentina becoming, like it has been cyclically for a long time, a complete vassal state of the U.S. Remember, Argentina was kind of a test bed for the GMO movement. They kind of bulwarked the GMO corn and the GMO soy down there. Argentina has it's been wrecked by just consistent political upheaval from both the Latin American left and right for a long time. But yeah, this idea that Javier Milei is some sort of a trad right wing guy, and he's our dude, he's our guy, he's so based, he's just this guy is a total idiot. He's a total shill. And just because he gives some lip service at the WEF about how I don't like communism, well, your whole program is just neoliberalism for Latin America. It's total privatization of resources so that they can be plundered by transnational corporations and transnational corporate cartels, and you can be under the thumb of the Federal Reserve private banking cartel. That's what Javier Milei is bringing. So it's ridiculous that people.
So you're saying that he's basically saying you need to be under the U.S. Fed, right?
U.S. Fed. So he wants to get rid of their central bank, which is actually owned by Argentina, and they've had tons of problems. They've tried dollarization before, and it completely wrecked their economy. It completely destroyed Argentina. And it was, if anybody wants to learn about kind of what it's like to live in a collapsed society, read about what happened in Argentina. And I think it was
so. What you're saying is you're a communist socialist, and you want socialism. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what the libertarians kind of retort always is. Well, if you're not a libertarian, you must be a commie. So get out of my face, commie, with that nonsense. So it's really Milei shows just how stupid people on the right are now. They're cheering on a guy because he says he wants to get rid of the central bank of Argentina. These people are acting like having a central bank is the problem. The problem is not a bank existing, right? I mean, there's a state-run bank is not inherently bad. I mean, Gaddafi had one, but it's what he did with it that they didn't like, right? What he wants to do is get rid of their bank and literally put them on the dollar under the Federal Reserve. It's insane.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people just don't understand this dialectic at play in places like, Latin, South America. I mean, you could look at America too. Like, okay, so America is America free market or is it socialist? Well, the world that we're going into is really, in my view, going to be a synthesis of the worst aspects of both things. So you're going to get like a corporate Fortune 100, Fortune 500 model of a centralized thing that tells all the countries what to do. And we saw this in the last few years with CUF when these unelected international bodies are telling and advising America what to do. Here's your policies on how to handle CUF. And you'll notice that why it just happens to be everywhere in the whole world. Suddenly everyone wears the masks. And suddenly every Fortune 100, Fortune 500 company is pushing the Skittles rainbow. It's like everywhere all of a sudden. Yeah, that's because it's a coordinated agenda. And it's a mix of elements of socialism, elements of neoliberal, free market economics. It's the worst put into a big superstructure. So it's not either of these systems, and people kind of have a hard time looking past the dialectic of socialism or free market libertarianism. It's like you got to be one or the other. That's all there is. By the way, this is the article I was looking for. so people think, so again, touching on why I had talked about the expose of that person earlier. So and again, I almost never talk about canon law and orthodoxy because I don't, to me, canon law is boring. I don't get into this kind of stuff. I will talk about this one time because it's relevant to this. So canon law guards, it's like another way to set boundaries. Laws are made, like Jesus says about the Sabbath, right? The Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Okay, canon law is made for man, not man for canon law. But it's the purview of the church to interpret and apply them, the canons, by the clergy. Okay, so for example, if a person wants to be a teacher or priest, a guide, a spiritual, a real life coach, there's parameters as to who qualifies for that. Not everybody's qualified for that. For example, I am not qualified for that. What? You talk about things on the internet. Yeah, but I do not give spiritual advice. I don't tell people what's appropriate for their marital situation. I don't counsel people. I don't apply and interpret canon law. This is my one exception, and I'm just going to cite another priest's article about the purpose of canon law. Now, did you know that there are around 13 obstacles to becoming a priest? So if a person wants to become a spiritual guide, a spiritual father, as Paul says, that's actually a noble thing. It's a good thing to want to be that. And I think that in my situation, there's a couple things on this list that would discount me. And so, for example, if you had a past where you were kind of notorious and slept around, I did that. I would think that would probably count me out of being a priest. Now, in certain cases, bishops might, I'm not talking about me, I have absolutely no desire to be anybody's priest or guru or guide or anything like that. I don't mind talking about these things in an intellectual, academic way on the internet because that's my wheelhouse. But I'm not your guide. I'm not your guru. I don't give you spiritual advice. You need to go to your spiritual father for that kind of stuff. And I also don't publicly post my prayers and this kind of stuff. I just think all that's really distasteful. But there's things that disqualify a person from being a public spiritual guide and teacher. And those things are there for a reason, and it has nothing to do with whether you can be saved or not. Okay, so people are saying, oh, you're going after this guy because of his past life. No, I have the same, well, I don't have gender dysphoria, but I have similar types of passions that I would say would prevent me from being anybody's spiritual guide. But the reason that these qualifications are there is so that it doesn't bring scandal and it doesn't bring problems to the church where you have people who are not fit for that kind of a role being put in that kind of a position. So, for example, a new convert in Orthodoxy is not allowed into seminary right away, right? There's a period where they have to be Orthodox for a few years before a priest recommends them to seminary. You don't just become Orthodox, send an email to the seminary and say, oh, I'm going to start seminary tomorrow. Here's the money. Let me in, right? There's all kinds of obstacles that might be there to keep a person or to wisely prevent a person from taking on that role. For example, becoming baptized for bizarre reasons, apostasy, leaving the faith, or coming back to the faith. Hey, Tristan, could you mute for a second? There's an echo. In fact, physical defects and illnesses actually could potentially prevent a person from being in the priesthood. One's age can also prevent a person from being in the priesthood. Family situations can at times prevent a person. Has that person struggled with or had issues with certain serious types of sin? For example, were they previously involved in a life of thievery? If a person was, for example, a thief for many, many years and they converted to the church, there's nothing wrong with that person. Of course, that person can convert and come to the church. However, you don't make a new convert who has a problem with, for example, stealing money. You don't put them in charge of the church treasury. Obviously, that's absurd. So likewise, a person who had, for example, dysphoria issues or certain types of Skittles issues, of course they can come into the church. But they're not ready, or they're not in a position to immediately be put into being a spiritual guide or father, you see. That's the key point that I was getting at. A lot of people just ignored all of that when, if you've been in the Discord and known what we've talked about for many, many years, these are all the points that FDA made, right? FDA has made these points that people want to be teachers and priests, and that's a great, good desire. But there's a path to doing that, and what the devil often does, this was FDA's point, is offer shortcuts. He says, no, you don't have to actually go get a college degree and enter into seminary or any of that stuff. And again, even the college degree thing is not necessarily the case. It's like, you don't have to study. Oh, you don't have to do any of that. You can just do the shortcut, set up your ministry on Twitter. Now, again, I've always said that you shouldn't do that. And again, when I converted, I took all of my stuff to Father Vladimir and I said, please read these things. Tell me if you think that I shouldn't talk about this stuff. Right? So it's not that there's one rule for all, because there might be a situation where there's a need for priests, and maybe a bishop relaxes some of these qualifications that aren't like going to be serious, right? Like, you're not going to take a murderer or some dude on death row and immediately put him in the priesthood, right? That would be one of the serious sins that a person can still be saved and repent from, sure. But it doesn't mean that they're ready to be in a priesthood situation, right? And there's other ones too that you might not expect. Like maybe that person was in a situation where even their wife left them and committed adultery or something like that, right? That's an old canon that's there for a reason. A lot of these things are there because of difficult situations that it might put a person in were they to enter the priesthood with these life situations, right? There's other things like liabilities to the state, right? Maybe that person works as a soldier. Maybe that person works as a senator, right? It's not going to be appropriate as a senator for that person to become ordained. And then other things too, like a bad reputation. If that person had a notorious, lifestyle of being, I don't know, let's say Larry Flint converts to Orthodoxy. Can he convert? Of course. But you're not going to make Larry Flint a priest and a spiritual guide in a year, right? I mean, so it's really a lot of common sense stuff if you read this article. And so that was the point about the people who become online grifters and set up their online spiritual life coaching things, is that it's 100% obvious common sense that it's not appropriate. And the fact that those people won't say who they're under or who's given them the permission to set up their life coaching spiritual exercises, and given the fact that he publicly is telling people things about gender that are not orthodox, I mean, those are all obvious red flags. And no, I do not feel bad about saying that those are red flags. So anyway, that was the whole point of all that. BMX in 1966, long time super chatter. Thank you so much. He says, here's $10. Great vid. Thank you so much, BMX. Appreciate that. I'm going to change the title of this because none of this was about the WEF. I did have the intention of talking about WEF, and then it ended up being about all this kind of stuff. So I actually intended to have either Father Moses or FDA come on to discuss this topic. Maybe I'll do a whole other stream about that as well. But so anyway, that's the point of this stream. That's the point of the topics that we're talking about here. Thank you guys in the chat. I want to remind you guys to head on over to chalk.com. If you want to de-soy yourself, one of the ways to do that is to change your diet and also change your activities, change your modus operandi for how you operate in the world. And that means getting in the gym. That means, go get your Planet Fitness membership or whatever, or if you have a local gym. It's time to step out of the soy domain, get off the internet, get in the gym. That's something that we've done in the last several months. It's been great for me and Jamie. We love it now. Once you get in the habit of it, you really like it. And chalk is an aid to that, right? So you're not gonna magically just be buff or whatever. I'm still in the process of getting into the vein of the cycle of working out. But this is one thing to help you on that journey, and that's the performance stack at chalk.com. That's the Tomcat Elite, the Tomcat 100, proven to boost testosterone in peer-reviewed studies. That is the Action 2.0. Again, helps you to boost those energy levels. We all spend a lot of time on our screens, so we need these kinds of supplements to help us have that boost to go get in the gym. The Chad mode, I'll be honest with you, Chad mode is it's a little too strong for me in terms of the normal dose. I have to take less of a dose because it really gets me like ramped up. But if that's what you need, then that's what you need. And that will help you get in the gym, give you that energy to go over there. And by the way, it's not just for dudes, it's also for girls. Use the promo code J50, that's JAY50 to get 50% off these products. We're all about toxic masculinity. We're all about getting in the gym. We're all about getting, it doesn't have to be the gym. If your thing is, running, whatever, that's fine. It's just time for dudes to be dudes, to get more of that warrior mindset. I know it's kind of like that sounds like a corny life coach type of thing, right? But seriously, like, guys they've lost the idea of what dudes have traditionally been involved in, right? And so people are pretending now, well, I'm a Twitter monastic, so I shouldn't be concerned with starting a business or look, most of us are not going to be monastics, okay? And if you're not going to be a monastic, then you're going to be involved in masculine activities. That means starting a business. That means getting in shape. That means that kind of stuff. Okay. So it's time to stop being lazy and using excuses to avoid being a man. It's that simple. Men control their emotions. They control their passions. They're not guided by their emotions. They don't just emotively react. And I admit that, yeah, sometimes in debates I've lost my temper. But those are few and far between in the hundreds and hundreds of hours of debates that we've done. Now, FDA is in the chat. Would you like to mention, I don't know if you're able to speak, do you have any comments, FDA, about like what it means to be a spiritual father, that there's certain rules and parameters for that? If you do want to hop on, you're welcome to. Being clergy, obviously you could speak to that better than I could. But if you can't come on, that's fine. I'll add you as a speaker. I did put up this article again. If you guys want to see the article that I shared, 13 obstacles to becoming a priest. How you doing, FDA?
Hey. God bless you guys. May Christ, who is baptized in the Jordan, sanctify our lives, and blessed feast to all of you. Yeah. I think we should do a talk with Father John, and just because he's on Patristic Faith too, and kind of go over this stuff sometimes. But I thought and I appreciated that you posted the article there about impediments, 13 obstacles to becoming a priest. I talked with Father Russell and some of the parishioners today after Theophany, the liturgy of Theophany, for Theophany, and we discussed this. And there was even a retired priest there too that we're discussing some of the obstacles and what it means to be a teacher, and kind of continue this conversation even into.
Could you comment on just kind of in brief some of the stuff that you mentioned last night in that Discord chat, where you talked about how it's really kind of an issue of qualification, right? Not everybody is qualified to do every kind of job, and so the temptation is to shortcut. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, and I think too that on the catechesis continuing education class, I talked about what it means to enter into the church. That we're in the world, but not of the world. We're putting the secular world behind, and we're changing our way of thinking. Now, the secular world says that, son, you get your goal and you go for it. You determine what you want.
Yeah. And
notice it's always about do what makes you feel happy. Put yourself first. Be successful. See you at the top. Kind of thing where you determine your own kind of reality. And,
right.
Secular kind of life coaching kind of tells you this too, right? Yeah. When we enter into the church, we put away those things. And we're no longer the masters of our own lives. Scripture says you can't serve two masters. And so one of the things that we realize, and you and I have talked about this too, is just the whole notion of virtue epistemology, virtue ethics, and the notion of prelates too, that we enter in as if we're entering a rehab program, and it is. I made a mess of my life, and it's no longer manageable by my way. And so you have the incarnational community of your parish and your priest to kind of guide you, and we know we're imprelist. We know we can't see things correctly about where we're supposed to go in life and stuff like this. And so, look, there's nothing wrong with wanting to, let's say, be a teacher or pursue the priesthood or something like that. But ultimately, there's a prescribed way of doing that, and it's under your priest and it's under your bishop. And we're the one holy Catholic and apostolic church. We talked about this last night. Apostolos, sent.
The ones who are sent.
The ones who are sent. All are called, few are chosen. Doesn't Scripture say that?
Mm-hmm.
And so, those who have acquired more virtue are in a position to, you know, if you express an interest, well, they look at you, they know you. You've been going to confession.
Yeah.
You've been doing these things. And so a priest might just be honest with you and be like, hey, I don't think this is the path for you.
Right.
But what we don't do is prescribed is, well, I'll determine it. I'll do it by myself. And I talked about that tonight, too. It's the same way that we read theology, too. We don't read theology in a Platonic, abstract world, but incarnationally, in terms of those who are more virtuous, who can guide us and teach us.
So the retort we often hear to this, and then I'll let you address this common retort, is, why are you trying to be a gatekeeper? I'm a 22-year-old convert. I've been reading the canons. I can spam quote on Twitter what the canons are, and you don't want me to help people and tell them the truth because you're a gatekeeper.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, we need gatekeepers, right?
We need gatekeeper, and we talked about this last night too. It's just a Western kind of Protestant mentality that, well, I like gatekeeping in order, and
there's walls and gates around my house and my property. There's supposed to be a wall at the border to protect our nation. But in the religious realm, no, there's no guards. Right.
So it's like you're at the border agent, and you pull out an anonymous passport. Well, hey, look, obviously I know everything about whatever you need me to say. Just let me through, right? Why is there even like a gatekeeper and border patrol agent here at all, right? You're just trying to control me. What's the good order? Now, of course, obviously we can see when this is abused,
right.
Just like authority in general.
Right.
But remember, all these things, these terms, these concepts, these words, they're situated in paradigms. So it's not that the words or the principles are bad in themselves, but it's in that in which they're situated.
Yeah.
And informed. If it's a bad paradigm, bad authority ends up being bad. This is kind of our critique of Roman Catholicism, right?
Right. So it's not a question of like, authority itself should be worshipped. It's all about just the authority. It's rather that there's a harmonization, a synthesis of all these things, right? So it's not like, so do you believe in the Bible or do you believe in church tradition and canon law and the councils and the Father? Well, all those things kind of work together. And so when in a lot of the say Protestantism or Roman Catholicism, you have like, it swings over into it being all about that one thing. Oh, it's all about the Pope and what he says. Oh, no, it's all about the Bible and what I interpret the Bible to be and this and that. And I think, Father Moses has hopped on, and I want to ask him what he thinks because, I've sat down and listened to him give his assessment of this, and he made a really good point on a chat that he had with David Patrick Harry a few months ago where he was saying, look, what's happening is that on the one hand, it's good that a lot of people are seeing and hearing about Orthodoxy, getting interested, but what's happening is that they're not going to the church and getting the healing, and they're just sort of like spurging out online. And I totally agree with that critique. And I agree too that like inadvertently we might have actually participated in that happening, not on purpose, not to like, I want to set up an internet spurg army. No, it's like people get their information from the internet. They live on the internet, and then it sort of regurgitates in their life to where then everything is about like, well, I live my orthodoxy out on the internet, but it's all wrong-headed because, for example, a person wants to be a priest, they want to be a teacher, whatever. Like, you have to go to the actual local Orthodox church and go through that process, right?
That's what I was going to say is that the priest who's experienced, and Father Moses can jump on and talk about this too, is the best position to be able to, especially if they're the person's in confession and discussion with the priest, to know, do you have certain kind of vices that would prevent you, or maybe you need to spend more time maturing in the faith before you go on to not even positions, possibly like going to seminaries and possibly in clergy, but like maybe other positions too. You know, you and I talked about what if you spent your time in doing cons and stuff like that.
Yeah, like a con man that converts, you're not going to put him in charge of the church treasury.
Let's
right?
put him in the church treasury.
Right.
Anyways, Father, good to have you on here. Blessed Theophany. And chime in here.
Yeah, it's for us to come. I think, one of the things that Jay was just saying about the talk that I had with Patrick Henry was, historically, when people set about doing theological work, the first, however long you want to say it was, 5, 10, 15 plus years, was just all about purifying the nous. It was all about purification. I mean, we have this system, purification, illumination, deification. It wasn't until they had reached a point of illumination or deification that they would really write or even talk about these things. And a kind of perfect example of that, you could say, is when you look at the writings of St. Gregory Palamas. St. Gregory was gifted with an acute intellect and an ability to communicate that honestly probably was really far beyond what the other monks were able to do, right? That was his particular gifting, was that he was given not just a purified nous, but he was also given an incredible intellect, right? I mean, the guy obviously, had a very high IQ, as we would say today, right? But you can see on his writings when he defends hesychasm against Barlaam, when he writes those letters in defense of hesychasm, it's signed by the abbots of the monasteries on Mount Athos, and the signatures are really funny. I can't remember, one of them was like Theophilus, who may be a hesychast. Everybody's very self-deprecating and humble in their approach. But he was chosen not just because he had seen the uncreated light, because I think it's very clear from the document that a lot of the fathers on Athos had seen the uncreated light. He was chosen because both he had seen the uncreated light, the fathers knew that he was purified, and he was articulate, right? So it's a combination of those things. I don't know if you guys remember, but in the book, I Know a Man in Christ, with Saint Sophrony and his conversations with Metropolitan Horathios Vlachos. And there's a point in there, I could probably scroll through and find the quote right now, but Horathios asks Sophrony. Now think about the position that Horathios was in. He wasn't a metropolitan at the time. I believe he was either a deacon or a priest, but he had spent all this time studying, in university. I think he had his PhD at the time. I mean, he was so incredibly well-versed in the fathers. He grew up in the church, right? So he's cradle Orthodox, so he probably had 30 years of Orthodoxy. And when he talks to St. Sophrony, he asks him, what do you think about what I'm writing? And St. Sophrony's response is it's good, it's just very basic. And it's so funny and so telling that people, think, Horathios knows so much. Well, Horathios didn't have the experience that St. Sophrony did. In fact, St. Sophrony in the book counsels Horathios and says, if you actually want to know what you're writing about, because Horathios' approach is scholastic.
Yeah.
It's intellectual. And Saint Sophrony says to him, I will set you up with a place. I think it was in Carulia, which is also called Dread Carulia, which is one of the most ascetic, austere locations on Mount Athos. And he said, I will set you up there, and you can go live in obedience. And having lived basically in obedience, you can experience and actually know the things that you're talking about. And that, I would say, is one of the fundamental differences between the East and West, is that for us in the East, to know about something is to have experienced it, right? I mean, that's like, it's one of the reasons, Jay, I don't take issue with your theological teaching, because you're not trying to build on the fathers. You're trying to take what the fathers say and articulate it in a way that's accessible for people. But I think we often kind of lose sight of the fact, and I think a lot of people kind of coming to orthodoxy have this very scholastic approach, as if they can understand the church fathers because, you know, they've read them for a year or two.
Yeah.
And there's so many levels, and I'm sure you're familiar with this. It's like, even in my, like, I've been Orthodox 17 years. So I was Orthodox for a little over 3 years, I think, or just about 3 years. And then I went to seminary. Then I was in seminary for 3 years. Then I was ordained when I graduated seminary. And now I've been a priest for 10 years. This will be my 11th year coming up. And I go, man, you know, I read some books before I went to seminary. Then I went to seminary and was reading essentially on top of what I was even studying in seminary. And then coming out of it and becoming a priest, and then studying for a few years on my own. And now 10 years later, it's like, man, you can't trade time. It takes so much time to understand even the historical context in which the saints were writing and how they were affected by things, and how I'm not saying that there's problems in the saints, but the saints are contextual, you know, and you have to understand them. And sometimes those contextualities are peculiar, you know, like the whole baptism controversy where people weren't being baptized until later in life because they were afraid of defiling the baptism, right? And so, like, you have weird peculiarities that pop up in the church that are sorted out, but then you have to look and understand how there are certain things that are said within that context that don't necessarily follow, you know, the historical line of the church. The same thing with, like...
Father, would you say...
Yeah.
So, you know, I always talk to people that orthodoxy has kind of, well, it's a virtue epistemology. Now, in philosophy and ethics, you know, everybody wants these formulas. And formulas seem really nice to people because everybody has access to them. Oh, I just put in the stuff and I get the outcome here. And with moral issues, and this will eventually tie even to knowledge too, life's not like that. I would certainly say, like, with orthodoxy, it's the hard work acquiring virtues through the experience that gives you the kind of insight. So there's no patent answer on this. Like, you have to form conscious and look, and that's maybe why these things, there's these peculiarities that pop up. But it's the one who's acquired the advanced virtues that answers. And I think that really makes people who are suffering from pride upset, because they want a level playing field. I want to be at the top. And Jay and I talked about this too, that, you know, the devil's first temptation was to promise the knowledge of God with a shortcut. And I think that it can all be presented to us that, well, shouldn't you just be able to just, like, go to the books and just read this stuff? You know, the hard work is the perseverance and the diligence and acquiring virtue and the experience and all the various things that would allow you to have the kind of nuance to be like, well, in this situation, no. In this situation, yes. anyways, I was thinking about that and maybe thought you could add to that.
Well, yeah, I think there's two things with that I would say. Like, number one is we live in a culture, right, that is a rule of law. That's our culture. And when people read the canons, this is a perfect example. They read the canons as if the canons are rule of law, meaning like in America, if you get caught with an ounce of cocaine, there is a mandatory minimum sentence for that, okay? And so if you're found guilty of cocaine possession, you are basically punished accordingly. The problem is that people then go to the canons of the church, which are, they're not relativistic in what is right and wrong. What they are is they are contextualized twofold. They're contextualized within history, and second of all, they are recommendations, okay? So somebody reads St. Nicodemus, right? And I don't know who the priest was, but it's funny because there was a video recently where this priest put out. I didn't have a chance to respond to it. And again, it's just a disagreement. But he said something like, everyone should read St. Nicodemus's Manual of Confession. I remember reading it during seminary, and it was so heavy. I mean, I felt like I was going to fall into despair. And I called my spiritual mother, and she's a real spiritual, she's a real, whatever you want to call it, eldris, whatever. Awesome. She's the I think longest living monastic in this country. She's been a monastic for over 50 years, I think, at this point, okay? So it's not like, and she's cradle Orthodox and blah, 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 and her spiritual father was a saint. And I remember asking her, I said, Mother, I'm reading St. Nicodemus. I'm like, it is so heavy. I don't know what to do with it. And she said, oh, I don't let any of the sisters read it. And I said, really? She says, oh, yeah, it's too much. And I said, what about me? She was like, well, you're going to be a priest. She's like, you have to read it. And so it's so interesting because, when you read someone like St. Nicodemus and he says, okay, whatever, I can't remember the exact thing because I just remember them in generalities. But let's say you take something like, by the way, I'm out of breath because I've been carrying a baby. I got a baby on me right now, huge fatty. So I'm like huffing and puffing as I'm like carrying him on for, it's been like a couple hours. Anyway, so he's talking about, St. Nicodemus is talking about something like, let's say masturbation. And he's like, if somebody masturbates, I can't remember what the penance is. Let's say it's like 100 days or something, or 120 days. And then he's like, but if they're willing to fast until the third hour and do like 100 prostrations a day and only eat dry food, then give them a 40-day penance. It's like there's nobody in the church today who lives great Lent like that, let alone somebody who converts, in their whatever, late teens, early 20s, mid 20s, who's now I give penances. So this is not that I don't give penances. And I certainly give penances for watching pornography and whatnot because it destroys a person's soul. But the degree to which St. Nicodemus is talking is not feasible. The application of those penances, it's not feasible. And you actually see this in the life of St. Porphyrios of Calivia, right? It says that after he leaves Mount Athos, he goes to the world and he starts hearing confessions. And all he has is St. Nicodemus's book on confessions. And so somebody comes, they're like, oh, I had premarital sex. It's like, okay, 10 years without communion. He's just giving them right out the book, right? And it says that he's like traveling. He comes back there like a year later or something, okay? Now, it doesn't say exactly what the penances were. It just says that he gave them right out of the book. So, these are really strict penances. And he says he comes back a year later and he's talking to the people. He's like, how have you been? They're like, okay, have you been going to church? Somebody's like, I haven't gone to church in a year. And he's like, why not? He's like, well, you told me I couldn't commune for this like super long period of time. So like, what's the point in even going to church? And then he realized it was the application that was necessary, right? And that took discernment and the guidance of the Holy Spirit. So I hope that kind of answers without like, we never want to relativize. We're not relativizing morality. What we're saying is the church is a hospital, and in the hospital, there's medicine that has to be given to the people. And quite frankly, when somebody's new, they have no clue. I mean, the reality is outside of a priest, people have a lot of times no clue what's even going on in the church. They don't know what other people are struggling with in their marriages, in their private life. You know what I mean? They just don't even know or understand these things. And yet they have all kinds of wild opinions on how people should be and what people should do. I mean, you and I talked about this, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but like there was that flare up on Twitter recently about marital fasting. And it's like, I'm like, this is people who have zero idea of actually dealing with people.
Yeah.
Like they've like not heard confessions. And I'll give you,
that's what's great about Father Russell. And when you come up here, you'll meet him and you'll know, like Father Turbo said the same thing, a bit like, this guy's the real deal. And it's because he knows people. He knows what works, and he always says with regards to the canons and all this stuff, it's not statutory, it's therapeutic.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's in this statutory mindset, and they think they're like, oh, I'm going to compromise if I don't follow the rules and different stuff like that. But I mean, I don't even think we need to make it that complicated. It's like, does that system and model work? Does it make people better? It doesn't. It just, like you pointed out, Father, with this thing. Well, look how he applied, and the people weren't even going to church.
Right.
All the clergy just, we want you to become more than you are and to become better and to be healed. And so you've got to kind of take on that mindset. I think it's pretty easy just to look at the like kind of products and the effects. What's working?
Well,
to make you better and acquire more virtues and be healed.
And like when we use that reference, it's Saint Porphyrios. I mean, he's one of the greatest saints of like the last 500 years. I mean, the grace that he experienced was like almost like virtually limitless. I mean, Saint Paisios said, my spiritual television is in black and white. Porphyrios is in color. I mean, St. Porphyrios saw the entire book of Revelation in the cave on Patmos, right? Like it's not like St. Porphyrios was not a heavy hitter saint. I mean, he's literally like one of the greatest saints in the history of the church. And even he, as a new priest, made mistakes, and had to learn, through trial and error and through working with people what actually worked, right? There's an elder in Russia who, I think it was an elder in Russia. I don't think it was a saint. I think it was an elder. Maybe it was a Greek elder. I can't remember, but he said something like, the same medicine given to the same person at two different times of their life has dramatically different effects. And it's like, if a person has cancer and you give them chemo, it will make them well. But if they're well and you give them chemo, it will make them sick.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that people forget that it's not even just that, but like the saints talk about like the robustness of the person that you're dealing with. Or even, here's another wild one that saints talk about, or St. Nicodemus talks about. He says, for people who have a bunch of money, he's like, give them basically stricter penances for eating. And then he says, if somebody's poor, give them a penance that includes some financial stress. It's so wild, So, like you think about this, and it's like they were. But even reading St. Nicodemus, he's a master in his time. And who are the people that he's ministering to, right? People that were steeped in orthodoxy, They were people that were born and raised and grew up in the church and were around elders and were around monastics and all of this. They had a formation. You know, in America, it's like, it's not a joke. Like Father Turbo and I were talking about this recently. Like, it's not a joke that they call it the barbarian lands. You know, we're not raised in a pious culture with pious, holy people around us. You know, most of us were raised by boomers that are like borderline, like sociopaths, right? And like the spirituality is super influenced by Calvinism, right? And other deplorable theology that, you know, how many people have come to orthodoxy and they're like, they don't believe that, they don't really believe that God loves them. And it's like, why? It's because they were Protestant before. Mm-hmm. They understand the idea, but they don't really understand in their heart the love of God. And we say it all the time, the lover of mankind. As they want to understand, but they don't understand it. Why? Because the Protestant God, right, is often like, you know, the blind watchmaker, right? You know, he kind of sets things in motion. He preordains things. He makes things happen. Hopefully you're Christian and they're to your favor. And if you're not, you know, you're stuck out of luck, right? I mean, he's a tyrant. It's brutal. The Protestant God is very brutal. And he's more pagan than Christian, obviously. So.
Father, I was thinking about, like, just like where you're saying, like, trying to understand it and not. And I don't know, one of the most kind of important parts of the liturgy and most impactful is when you say the prayer right before the reading of the gospel. Lord,
illumine our hearts, O Master, lovest mankind with the pure light of the divine knowledge. Open the eyes of our understanding, that we may, that prayer. Mm-hmm.
I almost tear up every single time that we could approach these things. You know, I was talking with the parishioners today that, I mean, you think about the Ethiopian eunuch that couldn't understand what he's reading and needed somebody to interpret it. And Revelation says, but there is nobody. Nobody could open the scrolls except for Christ. And every time you say that prayer, Father, I think about that it's like all these things are just words. And this is tying back to what Jay was saying. We can't just open these books, even the fathers, and just read through them. So when you say that prayer, it's in the context of calling the Holy Spirit down and the grace of God to illumine us and all the things that are going on in the liturgy. In an incarnational Trinitarian, not by ourselves, not an abstract Platonic world, in which the Holy Spirit works through all those pieces in a real community, in a tangible, concrete, incarnational way, that it's that now I can get what it means. God is a good God who loves mankind.
Let me real quick go ahead and just end the live stream here, and then we can continue the Twitter conversation. We did have a super chat from Majorian for $100. Thank you so much. I will share these with both Father Deacon Ananias and Father Moses because they have popped on and given us their wisdom and insight, and I always like to support the work that they do. Majorian says, what is the counter argument to the Reddit tier take that Constantine was not a legitimate Christian and that he was a secret Neoplatonist mystery cultist? Well, first I would say that there's not any evidence I'm aware of that he actually was a secret Neoplatonist mystery cultist. I mean, he did postpone his baptism, as Father Moses talked about, but that was because it was very popular at that time to postpone your baptism because they didn't want to defile it. So even though that didn't become the norm for the rest of the church, a lot of people believe that, and we don't fault them for believing that at that time, even though it wasn't actually the correct attitude. So I think with Constantine, the answer is that the church accepted him as a Christian. So that doesn't mean that everything he did was always Christ-like. I think that you know, he was a genuine Christian. He is entered into our, you know, list of the saints. I'm not actually sure why Roman Catholics don't believe Constantine was a saint, but yeah, for the Orthodox, we definitely think he's a saint. BMX 1966 says for $5. Forgot to mention, have a blessed theophany to you and Father Deacon Ananias, and also Father Moses. Thank you so much for those. I'm going to go ahead and close the YouTube stream, but people can keep discussing over on Twitter in that open space.